Okay, good afternoon. We will call to order this regular meeting of the Board of Trustees for Tuesday, April 23rd. And will the clerk please call the roll?
Absolutely, Madam President. Good afternoon, everybody. Board roll call. Trustee Calvert. Here. Trustee Caudill. Here. President Simon Holland.
Here.
Trustee Kelly. Here. Trustee Minetto. Here. Vice President Raymond. Here. And I am here, and our student representative, I'm sure, is in class. Madam President, everybody's here, and we have a quorum.
All right, thank you. Melissa, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. Ms. Batchelder, do we have public comment?
Yes. Kelly Roper.
Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Kelly Roper for the record. I believe that staff in charge of Zoning Advisory Committee is failing the committee, the board, our taxpayers, and our children. I recently heard a quote that said, if everyone gives up a little, then everyone wins. These last few months, I have felt like the district staff is asking Huffaker to give up everything while gaining nothing. As a split feeder school, half of us will already lose alignment to Swope and Reno. On top of that loss, it is proposed that we be the lone school to feed Galena remaining at Pine. We will overnight lose two communities we were a part of, making us feel as if our kids are being cast aside and don't matter. Huffaker has been asking to be included in the zoning for hers middle school. District staff has received our messages of concern and drafted alternatives in such a way to ensure they fail. At the March 21st meeting, your committee asked for clarification of some alternatives. Staff was directly asked by the committee to show what numbers for DePoli would look like if Pleasant Valley stayed. They did not do that. Consistently, as far back as January, the committee has made motions asking for that information. There is no transparency if such information is not provided. Staff has refused to run numbers in which Pleasant Valley remains at DePoli and Huffaker is zoned for hers. Adam Searcy said it wouldn't work. The stakes are high for the children in my neighborhood. I cannot take his word for it without evidence of clear numbers to back up his statement. Every time he creates an alternative where Huffaker is at hers, he doggedly refuses to run numbers for Pleasant Valley staying at DePoli. We want to see specific numbers two schools are asking for, not manipulation of those numbers. The school district is prioritizing addressing crowding in South Reno while neglecting to address more established neighborhoods. By keeping Huffaker at Pine, the school district is missing a valuable opportunity to rezone Swope, which is overcrowded and difficult to rezone. The only relief Swope is receiving is removal of small neighborhoods from Huffaker. Removing an entire school from Swope, such as Anderson, would have a far greater impact on that crowding. How is it possible that Swope, a very old building, can house 6 elementary schools, and yet we are being told that a brand new building, modern, can only hold 4? What a waste of taxpayer money if schools that are built don't fit the needs of the communities they serve. I am disappointed that the district has prioritized eliminating split feeders at the elementary level and to create social continuity and creating a disastrous situation at the middle school to high school level. Huffaker is already lost. Please fight for us. We need honest numbers your committee asked for and staff has not provided. If they had only left Pleasant Valley at DePoli in alternative D, we could see that. If Anderson was at Pine instead of Huffaker, Swope would get relief. I would like my statement to be part of the public record, please.
Thank you, Ms. Roper.
Kim Garback.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, Madam President, Superintendent Davis, and fellow council members. I'm here today to talk about the ESP program. My name is Kim Garback, and I'm with Chapman Financial. We work in the WEA building. And during these last 3 months, I've had an opportunity to observe Melissa Boson, president of WESP, and how she interacts with schools on a daily basis. I've had the opportunity to go out with her and meet with other ESPs as well and watch as she single-handedly manages that program on her own. Her efforts are tireless, and her ability to recruit, or not to recruit, but to invite new members into the program and show them the benefit they get out of that is unbelievable. Melissa's program and her grant is set to expire in August of this year. And while that grant is funded by NSEA and NEA, and there's not much that this board can do about that, my concern is more about how ESPs will be treated in the future. Right now, the talk of outsourcing ESPs is on the table, and that's very concerning for a major reason, which is the quality of work that they do. We know that when we outsource to another company, that company becomes independently in control of that process, leaving WEA out of that process of quality and out of the decisions of choosing whether to hire or whether to fire. Moreover, our ESP program is controlled by WEA right now, or by WESP, and they provide the caliber of work that we know can only be given by individuals who care about that process. We've seen time and time again that when companies are brought in and that process is outsourced, that profits are prioritized, and that only leaves us to carry us as far as where on the priority scale that quality of work will be in the future if we outsource ESPs. So today, again, just to summarize my argument or my call for help, I would like to ask the board to consider ESPs in the future, to not outsource ESPs, but to take care of and help our ESPs and help them to take care of our students like we all know they want to. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garbeck.
That's all I have for this item.
All right, thank you. We will close the public comment for this section and go on to our action to adopt the agenda. And items on the agenda may be taken out of order by the board, and the board may combine two or more items for consideration or remove an item from the agenda or delay discussion. Is there a motion?
So moved.
All right, motion to approve. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Minetto. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We are now on to the approval of the consent agenda, which are the items 2.02 through 2.14. Do we have any public comment? Okay.
Darla Lee.
Yeah, we're on the group, the consent agenda, so you can speak now on that. Thank you, Ms. Lee.
Hi, good afternoon. Darla Lee for the record. Yes, I just had, looking at this, $3 million for construction documents for the Wild Creek area, the proposed high school there. I would just like to know if these, that much money is being spent for a prototype design that could be on another site that would be, in my estimation, as I'm sure you all know, a better site. But if is it site specific to the northern section of Wild Creek? And that was a question which I know you can't answer, but I would like to have some kind of clarification, because if it's a prototype, it could be used, this huge amount of money could be used, on another site for the school. But if not, then I consider it common sense-wise just another step down the road to a very regrettable decision by this board to place the high school in the neighborhood that you have chosen as such an ideal site. And I definitely have a different opinion about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. We actually, because it is on the agenda, we can answer that question. So I'd like to see if Pete could answer that question, perhaps. The question is the $3.4 million on 2.13, $3.4 million for the construction documents and bidding phases for the new Wild Creek Area High School, is that, or any portion of it, for a prototype that could be at another site?
Pete Etcher, our Chief Operating Officer. So this is our first new prototype high school that we've built in many years, and we do plan on building in our WC1 campaign. There was 2 other high schools being contemplated. We definitely plan on using this basic floor plan again at the next two high schools. Now, every site, we always have to site adapt to a certain degree, but this will be our new prototype, and we will be reusing this as our intention.
Okay, great. Thank you, Pete. Okay, is there other public comment?
George Lee.
Welcome, Mr. Lee.
George Lee, Sparks. We went to the planning meeting and for the Truckee Meadows, and the one comment was made by one of the commissioners that the design looked like a battleship. For that amount of money, couldn't you come up with something better? But that's not what I was going to talk on. I was going to talk on, I really like the idea of it being a prototype, and so that it can be, but my biggest concern is that is there now, or is there going to be in the future any expansion of the size of the school? Because we heard talk of 2,800 students initially, that it could be as high as 2,800. And all of the planning that's gone into it. Is it designed for this new upper limit, which it's not new since this original upper limit, And also, we're currently running 115% at Spanish Springs High School. And that's what I was told. I think that's correct. Because of the people that are, the quote, overcrowding. And if you take 115%, even of the 2,100 that is projected now, that puts you in 24, 25, somewhere in there. But it could be, they go up to the upper limit where it was and then add 15% to that, and we're in 3,500 students. Is the design capable of absorbing that? Is this going to wind up, you're going to get 5 or 10 years down the road and there are going to be a bunch of trailers in the parking lots? And so that you can expand to take care of the students that, they came from nowhere, or whatever, or we want to shift them from somewhere else. The other thing is, I think there's a bit of short-sightedness in the fact that this is supposed to be the school on a hill, everybody's going to want to go to the big new high school. What about all those people who want to transfer in there? I know that it's going to have to absorb the people from Hug and the people from that they were going to bring down from 30 seconds. They were going to bring down from Sun Valley, but I imagine there are people going in special programs that are coming all the way from Spanish Springs and up by the Eagle, whatever it's called, Eagle's Nest or whatever up there that are driving down every day to go to Hug. For special programs. What about special programs? What about the fact that this has to be able to expand because everybody's going to want to go there?
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Mr. Etchart, would you respond?
Again, Pete Etchart, Chief Operating Officer. So the existing Hug High School is approximately 1,400 students. We're looking at moving approximately 600 to 700 students from Spanish Springs High School to the new high school. So you're talking about a capacity of around 2,100 to open. The school is being designed for around, I believe it's around 2,400 students. Now that being said, one of the issues we've obviously had in the past is overcrowding because we didn't have the finances to build new schools. Now that we actually have the resources to build new schools, and we're so thankful to the community for that, we don't envision being in this situation again. When we have overcrowding issues and our schools start to grow, then we hopefully will be building new schools to relieve that. Now we're thankfully on the agenda today, we're talking about reducing the number of portables that we've had to rely on for so long. So we don't envision having a parking lot full of portables at our new schools. We will build new schools as they're necessary, and they'll be growth related. These new schools that are actually underway now and the ones you're going to see over the next few years really are the ones that get us caught up from the past. Everything past, say, the next 5 years will be growth dependent, and we'll build the schools as we need them.
And if I could just clarify the process for how students get to a new school. Yes, there are some programs that would probably come from Hug over to a new school in the area. But generally, this school is designed for students that are zoned for that high school. And then students that would want to go there for a specific reason would have to apply for a variance to get to that school, and that has to be approved by the principal of the incoming school. So while many people might want to go to the brand new school, it will be primarily for students that are zoned for that school and also for special programs that are there. So that's all calculated in. Great, okay. Anything else, Ms. Batchelder?
That's all I have at this time.
Okay. Are there any questions on the consent agenda? Ms. Minetto?
I would like to pull 2.13 for right now
Okay,
for further discussion.
okay. All right. Any others that anyone wants to pull? Then we will be voting on items 2.02 through 2.12 and 2.14. Is there a motion to approve? Motion by Trustee Calvert. Is there a second? Second by Trustee Minetto. Is there further discussion on those? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, and then let's talk about 2.13. Did you want to say anything, Ms. Minetto, or do you want to hear from Mr. Etchert first?
Well, I feel that from my constituents that the problem is the pathways in and out of Sparks and Spanish Springs are kind of, McCarran and going up Clear Acre up to Sun Valley. They go up to all the way up to Spanish Springs, and I just feel like it's not a good location for this wonderful brand new school.
Okay, Mr. Etchert, do you want to comment?
I guess my main comment would be is obviously we've been under process for quite a while, and we would love to have an opportunity to meet with you and talk to you about any concerns you have, and we look at this as an opportunity to educate all of our board and our community on this incredible school as we see it. We also brought in experts from the community to look at this as far as an alternatives analysis. We always do an internal alternatives analysis of what the best site is for any of our schools. But we took it above and beyond on this one. We actually brought in planners and engineers, contractors, cost estimators, representatives from the Associated General Contractors, and it was unanimous that the best site for our new school, meeting our parameters, was the Wild Creek site. We're excited about this project, and I would say this also, it wasn't even close in the alternatives analysis. We had initially around 17 sites. It was whittled down to the top 9. That got whittled down to the top 5. But just because we identify a site as being a decent location for a school doesn't mean that we're going to be able to receive that site. For instance, the number 2 alternative on our list was actually a TMCC site that is now under construction for their new sports facility. The Wild Creek site was unanimously looked at as the best site for our school, and we knew that, and we felt strongly about that. We then took that to the community. We took it to the city of Reno, Sparks, Washoe County, RSCVA, the Board of Trustees, all voted to say that the highest and best use for the Wild Creek site was the new Wild Creek High School. So we're very excited about this. We really do strongly feel it is the best site. Any impacts that we are having as a school district on that site, we are mitigating. That is part of the design process from the city of Sparks. So any traffic improvements, flooding improvements, anything that needs to be done, we will be doing as part of a development, just like any construction project. So we feel that we are mitigating all of our impacts on that site.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other discussion on that? If not, I entertain a motion to approve.
So move. Or would you like
Motion.
me to read the motion? Or?
Oh, that's okay.
Okay, so move.
Well, and why don't you go ahead and read the motion? That's fine.
Okay. Madam President, I move that the Board of Trustees approves consent agenda item 2.13 for the approval of a contract to H&K Architects / Cunningham Group Architecture in the amount of $3,404,000 for the construction documents and bidding phases of the architectural engineering design services for the new Wild Creek Area High School.
Thank you, Trustee Dr. Taylor.
I'll second.
Second by Vice President Raymond. Is there other discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Okay, thank you, Ms. Minetto. Is a no. Okay, let's go on to items under Item 3.01, which is discussion and possible action to provide preliminary approval to the proposed revision of Board Policy 9065, Board of Trustees compensation and expenses, formerly Board of Trustees travel and other expenses, which addresses trustee compensation and limits to expense budgets for trustees whose term ends halfway through a fiscal year, and initiation of the 13-day public review and comment period. And we did listen to this before, and Trustee Caudill made a great suggestion that we include a reference to return of any equipment that has been provided to trustees by the district at the end of that trustee's term or whenever they may leave, and so that change has been made. David, did you want to add anything? Mr. Lasik?
Thank you, David Lasik, Chief of Staff for the record. I think you summed it up nicely.
Okay.
So the change is back in front of the board, and this would start the 13-day public review period, and then it would come back for one more board meeting after that for final approval.
Okay. All right. Do we have any public comment?
No.
Okay. All right. Would we entertain a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you.
I move that the Board of Trustees provides preliminary approval to the proposed revision of Board Policy 9065, Board of Trustees compensation and expenses, and initiates the 13-day public review and comment period.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second by Dr. Taylor. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Thank you. Item 3.02, consideration of adoption of Washoe County School District Board Resolution 19-004, a resolution directing that notice be given to the Debt Management Commission regarding the proposed issuance of up to $100 million in general obligation bonds, additionally secured with pledged revenues, and authorizing officers of the district to take other actions necessary to complete the issuance and related matters. Mr. Mathers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mark Mathers, CFO. I have two very similar items, 3.02 and 3.03. So I thought I'd go into them collectively, and then we can vote on them separately. As most of you know, our debt is paid by two different streams of revenue, property taxes and WC1 sales taxes. And so the first item is related to WC1 sales tax. This would be an additional authorization of $100 million. That would be combined with the remaining authorization we have of $215 million. So in total, we would have, if approved, we would proceed on having $315 million of authorization to issue WC1 sales tax-backed general obligation bonds. So this, for both items, this would be the first step in the process. There are multiple steps, slightly different for each item. But in this step, we are asking for your approval to go to the Debt Management Commission to ask for their approval of these bonds. And what the Debt Management Commission will do, and what is presented to you as well, is they will consider the sufficiency of this revenue. And so in this case, they are the sales taxes approved by voters in November of 2016. They will consider the sufficiency of those revenues against our existing debt that pledged that sales tax and this proposed new issuance. So again, to summarize, we have $215 million of remaining authorization that you granted us last year. So last year you authorized, or you allowed us to issue up to $300 million of WC1 general obligation bonds. We issued $85 million of that for Arrow Creek. So again, we have $215 million of remaining authorization, and we are asking for an additional $100 million at this time. And so what projects those will go towards are Wild Creek High School. So we intend with this authorization to cover the entire cost of Wild Creek High School, but also two facilities that will actually come before Wild Creek High School is started. And those would be the Swope Middle School expansion, which has a rough estimate of $30 to $35 million, and then Cold Springs Elementary School, roughly $35 to $40 million. So we want to get your authorization for the additional $100 million so that we can proceed on those two facilities and then embark on Wild Creek High School. What this will mean then is we are asking for their authorization for the entire $300 million, but in reality we will tranche or parse the actual sales out based on cash flow needs. So our first issuance probably would be in the $75 million range, and then we'd have a second sale upon the approval of the Capital Funding Protection Committee for Wild Creek later. But we want to do it all in one shot. It's kind of more efficient to go to the Debt Management Commission that way, and it provides us with the flexibility on a cash flow basis to sell in the market when it's efficient to do so, or hold back in the market if we see rates spike. In your resolution in Exhibit B, we do provide that sufficiency analysis, and so this is flashed up on the screen for you. In the fiscal year 20 budget, we have estimated $48 million of WC1 sales tax revenues. We have held that number steady, so it's very, very conservative here in this forecast. You can see the existing debt service we have that is in the $16 to $17 million a year range. Once we issue each of the series of bonds totaling $300 million, our total expected debt service is around $35.5 million. So we would have coverage, very strong coverage of 35%. And again, this assumes no growth in sales tax revenues at all, and we're seeing strong growth in sales tax, roughly 5% to 7% a year. So we've still got room to issue more WC1 bonds after this, but here today we are asking again for that additional $100 million in authorization so that we can proceed on the financing of, again, those three facilities: Swope Middle School expansion, Cold Springs Elementary School, and Wild Creek High School.
Okay, questions? Mr. Caudill.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Looking at Exhibit B for the WC1, for the life of the bonds, looks like you're projecting revenues of a little over $1.5 billion, with total debt service a little over $1 billion. So you said we have room for more WC1. How much room do you estimate that we have before it becomes too risky financially to keep issuing debt versus the revenues we're projected to bring in?
So thank you, Trustee Cotto. That's a big question. Let me try to back up and describe kind of the overall financing approach for the new school facilities being planned and authorized under WC1, as well as core school investments and renovations. It was always anticipated that those two revenue streams would fund the district's capital improvement program. So it was always the intention that we would combine property tax monies, which I'll talk about in the next staff report, with the new sales tax monies. Currently, our long-term plan through roughly fiscal year 2028 is in the $2 billion neighborhood. And so in this case, you can see, again, as you've noted, $1 billion or so in debt service. The rest, and so that leaves $1 billion, right, that we can play with. That would be accomplished through either pay-as-you-go facilities, so that 35% excess while we have it, we can build cash and pay for school facilities with cash, like we're doing with Bohatch Elementary School. But in addition to that, again, we have the property tax revenues that we are allowed to receive and bond against at least through fiscal year 2025. And so combined, this should provide resources of roughly 1.6 to 2.1 billion over that 10-year time frame. And as you probably know, WC1 doesn't have an expiration date. So even beyond that, as we see growth, that provides a funding source for, again, new school facilities related to growth.
Okay. Other questions? I had one very small question, Mark, on the bond timeline. At the end, it does spell out the uses of the bonds, and it did include O'Brien in the list that you called out for Swope, Cold Springs, et cetera. And you mentioned Swope and Cold Springs, but you didn't mention O'Brien, and I just wanted to know whether that was still.
No, that was a change we made. We intend to fund O'Brien Middle School with the property tax back debt, which you'll see in the next
Okay.
item.
Pete, did you want to add anything? Okay. Okay, great. So that, I just wanted to double check that. Okay. All right, yes, Trustee Caudill?
This is for both, but I sit on the Debt Management Commission, and one thing that was decided at our last meeting was that any entity that comes before the Debt Management Commission looking for approval of new debt, the CFO or designee needs to report on the institution's overall financial health and to go over all of the debt for that commission. And it may be helpful for the Board of Trustees to hear that presentation that Mark will give at our May 17th meeting, at our May 14th Board of Trustee meeting. So we can see that in advance of the Debt Commission meeting that a couple days later.
Would you be prepared to do that? That'd
Happy
be
to
great.
do that. Yep.
Okay, good. I think that's wise. And even though it's very conservative to estimate a flat sales tax growth, there may be years when it's not flat and it actually goes down. So, but I think it is a conservative estimate, and we have some cushion in there. Okay, that's a great idea, Trustee Caudill. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, we will vote then on, any public comment? Okay, we'll vote then just on 3.02 at this point, and this is for Board Resolution 19004 for the $100 million. Is there a motion? Go ahead, Vice President Raymond.
Okay. I move that the Board of Trustees adopts Board Resolution 19004, a resolution to notify the Debt Management Commission regarding the proposed issuance of up to $100 million in general obligation bonds and authorizing officers of the district to take other actions necessary to complete the issuance and related matters.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second by Trustee Caudill. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. And on to 3.03. Anything else you want to add to your discussion of these items?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Again, Mark Mathers, CFO. So this item does ask for your authorization to begin the process for selling $200 million of property tax-backed general obligation bonds. I should have said in both cases these are general obligation bonds and pledge the full faith and credit of the district. So, it's the district's credit on the line here. So again, we want to be conservative in our forecasts, but for this item, we are asking once again for a relatively large authorization of $200 million for multiple years of worth of projects. And so again, the notion would be we would issue the actual series of bonds in the market over time. In multiple series, we might go, in this case, with a series one per year in terms of those property tax-backed bonds. And I also should have said, you may be asking yourself, how much property taxes do we receive? We receive, this is not our operating rate on the property tax. This is our debt rate, property tax. So remember, the operating rate for property taxes comes through our budget. That's what you've seen in our tentative budget discussions. The debt rate does not flow through the state. It comes really kind of directly to the school district through the county treasurer's tax collection function. It is set at 38.85 cents per $100 assessed valuation. So that's the stream of revenues that would be pledged for these bonds, but our full faith and credit is on the line. We intend with this $200 million to be able to finance 3.5 years technically of our capital renewal program. And so remember, these are improvements to existing schools that we make to bring them up to the same standards as our new schools. That program is funded at $40 million per year beginning in fiscal year 20. So again, the intention is to issue bonds fiscal year 20, 21, and 22 for those 3 capital renewal program years. We're also funding half of the current program's costs at $16 million. And then in addition to the capital renewal program years, we would fund a remodel / expansion of O'Brien Middle School. And so that adds up to $194 million. So we're asking for authorization of $200 million. JJ's been kind enough to flash up the sufficiency schedule that we developed and that the Debt Management Commission will see. We, again, after several years, held property taxes steady. We do anticipate relatively mild increases in property taxes for the next several years. And so you can see how much that will generate, the projected revenues in that first column. We show our outstanding debt service currently, so these are bonds issued in prior years for prior facilities. Again, renovations, rehabilitation, improvements, and so forth. And then those debt service for those proposed bonds are shown inside the box. And so then our total debt service is laid out. A little tighter coverage here, but we actually have a fair amount of reserves of property taxes in case there were an issue in the next several years. We have roughly $40 million in reserves in property taxes that we could use as buffer in a worst case scenario to cover that debt service. And then if you go to the right, JJ, a little bit, or move it to the, yeah. Then you can see the coverage ratios, and we get into pretty healthy coverage ratios in not too short a time. After 2025, we have a significant amount of property tax-backed general obligation bonds that mature, and so they roll off, providing, like I say, significant level of coverage, almost 2 times past 2025 to afford that debt. So we feel comfortable being able to tell the Debt Management Commission we can afford this. And that would be our plan going forward. And again, the intention of doing multiple years authorization is just to have the flexibility to issue more quickly than if we were to go through the full 9-month process of going to the Debt Management Commission for each series.
Okay. That is a pretty skinny debt service coverage in whatever year that is, 4 and 5.
It is pretty skinny, but again, if we saw an issue, we wouldn't, an issue with our revenues, we wouldn't issue those other series, the 2nd and 3rd series you see. So, we will monitor and track that for sure. Again, we have the ability to cash fund the at least 1 year's of capital renewal program, right? We have $40 million in the bank, and each year is $40 million. So that would be an option for us. We don't have to sell, and we wouldn't sell if we have any kind of discomfort about the trend.
Great. And what is our current bond rating?
We are split rated. S&P has us at a AA, and Moody's has us at a high single A, but on positive watch.
Okay, that's very good. Trustee Caudill?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. If in the worst case scenario, our property tax revenue is not renewed after 2025, we're still responsible to pay this debt regardless.
You are absolutely correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I just want to make sure we know that. But we feel pretty good we can get that. But if it worst case doomsday scenario, we would have to figure that out.
So just as background, the scenario we're talking about is that per state law, we are allowed to issue property tax-backed general obligation bonds through 2025, and then that authorization expires. And so the state legislature extended that authorization in 2015 for 10 years. In a worst-case scenario where that authorization wasn't extended again, we would not be able to issue any additional debt that pledges that property tax. However, that debt rate then would be set at whatever level we would need to pay any existing debt. But it certainly would have an impact on the resources for our capital improvement program if it wasn't extended. And we've been working with our capital project staff to kind of model those different scenarios. But again, one of the things in our favor in this case is, again, we have a lot of property tax debt that rolls off after 2025. So we wouldn't have to worry about that revenue declining and not being able to cover existing debt.
Good questions. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, and no public comment? Then do we have a motion?
I'll make it.
Caudill?
I move that the Board of Trustees adopts Washoe County School District Board Resolution 19005, a resolution to notify the Debt Management Commission and Oversight Panel for School Facilities regarding the proposed issuance of up to $200 million in general obligation bonds, and authorizing officers of the district to take other actions necessary to complete the issuance and related matters.
Is there a second? Second by Trustee Calvert. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Mathers. Okay, we will move on to our big feature presentation on the strategic plan and reporting of metrics in item 3.04. And I won't read this entire thing because it is quite long and we'd be here till 4 o'clock. So Ms. Erica Olson is going to intro for us. Welcome.
There we go. Thank you, Trustees. Erica Olson for the record. We are kicking off our first of 3 strategic performance reports in conjunction with the strategic planning process and the goals and objectives that are a part of the strategic plan for the school district. So today, as I said, is one of 3. Just like last year, so we're continuing that same approach and that same methodology, which is bringing back to the trustees the performance against a third of the strategic plan over 3 reporting cycles today, August, and then also in October. In all 3 reporting cycles, we'll be reporting on the performance of the school year 18-19. Off in a year. 18-19. Yeah. Cumulating in October with a comprehensive report. You'll see today the goal champions will be reporting, as I mentioned, on 20 of the performance measures, and then again August another 20, and again October another 20. So with that, I won't take up any more time. We are jumping in with Dr. McNeil and the alt team.
All right. Welcome, Dr. Deputy and Dr. Lamarca and Ms. Beiersdorf, Dr. Green and Mr. Hayes and Dr. Parks.
Good afternoon, President Simon Holland, Superintendent Davis, members of the board, Deputy Superintendent Kristen McNeil. And I have my readers with me right now, which is awesome. So with me today, as already have been introduced, but I love to introduce them because they're an amazing team. I have Dr. Byron Green, our Chief Student Services Officer. I have Dr. Troy Parks, our Lead Area Superintendent under the Office of School Leadership. I have our Chief Academic Officer, Ms. Debbie Beiersdorf. I have our Chief Accountability Officer, Mr. Ben Hayes. And way down at the end, I have Dr. Lamarca, our Chief Strategies and Ombudsman Officer. So with that, we are going to go through each one of our goals around Goal 1. And so if you remember, we have all of our areas around academic, and so we will be going through, and just to orient you, so we are going to start, and I don't have the clicker, so I think it's down there. So we're going to start, and just to kind of freshen what the 112 stands for. So the 1 stands for Goal 1. The other middle 1 stands for the objective of 1. And then the 2 actually stands for the initiative. So when we talk about 112, that means we're talking about Goal 1, or Objective 1, and then going into the actual initiative level. And so each one of us will be going over one of those initiatives for you today. And then to make sure that we're going to be talking about academic targets. So our academic targets, again, will not be updated until our October presentation. So all of these metrics and the data that you're going to see has not changed and will not be changing at this point in time until we update in October. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Ms. Beiersdorf and Mr. Hayes.
Great. Thank you, Dr. McNeil. President Simon Holland and Superintendent Davis and members of the board. Thank you again, Deborah Beiersdorf, Chief Academic Officer, and I'm joined in this with Ben Hayes. Okay. All right. So we're going to start here with 1.1.2, which is our metric around meeting SBAC ELA targets. And wanted just to remind you, in case you didn't know, we are kind of in the thick of SBAC testing right now. It started back in the first week of March, and it's going to finish up here in the middle of May. So what I was wanting to do today was to update you on some highlights, challenges, and strategic activities in motion. And the first highlight that I wanted to share with you, again, that we're very excited about, you've heard me say that before, is the recent adoption of a new K-5 English Language Arts ELA curriculum. We're starting right now to put plans in place to provide professional learning to our teachers and our administrators prior to the start of the 1920 school year. I also wanted to point out a second bullet under highlights, and that's Nevada Kids Read and Zoom literacy instructional strategies. I've talked to you before, too, about the work that we're doing across many departments to make support for our students around English language arts as consistent as possible. We are in a legislative season. There are some potential changes coming around Zoom and around Nevada Kids Read. So we're hoping to have more answers about that soon. We're working together as a team to track those and to give input to Lindsay so our voices are heard in Carson City. In challenges, the second bullet there, which we won't have to bring forward to you in October, I don't think, is just the current use of dated materials. Again, we've talked about ELA adoption for our youngest students. Had been a while, so we're going to be moving away from that with the new materials that will roll out the beginning of next school year. And then one of the strategic activities in motion that I wanted to talk about, it's been about a year now since I first came and talked to you, and I believe Janine Kelly is behind me in the audience, who's our Department of English Language Development, is a change to our EL programming that very much honors and recognizes that all teachers should be teachers of English learners, and that's a new model that we moved into the current school year. Next year, we're going to be bringing 10 more elementary schools on board, so very excited about that.
Are we still on the first one there? Let's see. The numbers changed. Is that right? Yeah, okay. Do you have more to add on that, Ben?
For the record, Ben Hayes. I don't, if you're referring to kind of the proficiency, what I'd like to give the board some advance warning for, or a preview. I believe this team is meeting to come back at the end of June to talk specifically about proficiency rates in the context of what we're doing in the district, of course, as you see the strategic activities in motion, but also how we compare to other SBAC consortium states, how we compare around the other districts in Nevada, and different data-driven, but also strategic activities that are in motion a little bit more in depth. But I also, especially with new board members, would like to take that opportunity. We would like to take that opportunity to kind of go over the Nevada School Performance Framework, how these indicators all lead to kind of a bigger pathway picture, which culminates, I think, at the end of this presentation. This team will talk a little bit about the NSHE, Nevada System of Higher Ed remediation rates. So probably contextualize all that. But to get through this update, we decided we could talk, as I already am, ad nauseum on some of the data, so we'll wait until October when we get there, if that's okay. But I'm happy to answer any questions for any board member as to the specifics of the data.
Great. Okay. Well, you know, this is a real hot button for me, our grade level proficiency, and I did have a chance to sit down with Ben and with Dr. McNeil, it is a huge concern to me that, you know, in the last data that we have for third and fourth graders in English language arts, we're behind even Nevada. And so I think, you know, that's a real concern that I know the staff is really focused on, the team is really focused on. But I just feel like we really all need to do better for our children. I also, in the version 2.0 that was provided for the strategic plan, and I know we had a lot of conversation over the last year of modifying some of those targets so that we were, you know, we were stretching, but we were still reasonable and realistic. But what we had set out in that version 2.0 was that we would increase the percentage of students meeting standard as measured by SBAC rates in ELA and mathematics by 3% gain annually through 2021. And we're definitely not making that. We might. I don't know where we'll be this year, but we certainly didn't from 17-18 to 18-19. So I appreciate that we'll come back in June and have a more in-depth conversation. I think, the board as a whole, I think we're all engaged in this work together, and we need to know what things we can be doing to help support everyone to make that happen, because clearly when we have less than half of our kids performing at grade level proficiency, we want them to rise up. So just any other comments on that when we can move on. But I know we're all on the same page and we all have the same goal, and I know it's really hard to do. So just I was recently contacted by someone that said, well, you all don't talk about student outcomes very much at the board level, and I thought, we should talk about it more. So that's, I hope, for me at least, going to be an increased focus. Okay, onward.
Okay, again, Deborah Beiersdorf. This second slide up here speaks to our students taking the SBAC and their achievement around math. And maybe kind of taking what you were saying, President Holland, and matching that, your comment maybe up to this slide. I've shared in the past, too, the importance of high-quality adopted materials that are used consistently in all classrooms with strong professional learning and ongoing support. So I attribute some of that, the growth that we see as well. Again, we want that to be higher than it is that we see for 45% for school year 18-19. But anyways, our math elementary adoption was our most recent. Elementary and middle school was our most recent adoption prior to the one that you've just approved. So I wanted to put that out there as definitely a highlight. And then I wanted to jump down to strategic activities in motion on this one. And two things I wanted to talk a bit about there, and hoping my colleagues will jump in. We've worked really hard as a team this year to how can we better support our teachers and our principals in making those instructional decisions that they need to make, sometimes on the fly when they're seeing that students aren't achieving the way that we'd like them to be doing that. And that's the strength of interim or formative assessments. So our Office of School Leadership, Office of Student Services, Accountability, Ombudsman and Strategic Planning has come together to work on a plan about how we're going to be supporting our schools in formative assessments, and then what we're going to do throughout the school year as district leaders to make sure that our teachers and our principals have the help that they need. Not that we wait to see how SBAC scores come in. We definitely take a close look throughout the school year, but I think a more formalized approach to that is what we're working toward. So I'll stop there if anybody wants to jump in on that.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I'll just say, as a point of context, and thank you for your comment, President Holland, and I think hopefully this board has heard me say, and the superintendent and all of us have talked about it a lot. For the last couple of years in test scores, we've been kind of relatively flat, and the effect of that has been we've been passed by, especially in the lower grades, by a few districts and consortium states. We're still, I would say, ahead of California as a whole and other places, and by the time we get up to the middle grades, I think we're doing a lot better. But I think it's something that we've absolutely noticed, gone back to, you've probably heard us use the term kind of retool to get to the next summit on Everest. So this is one of those, what we noticed locally and what we've read nationally, and a lot of people are noticing nationally. I'll refer specifically to the new teacher project opportunity myth report that's gotten a lot of attention in the last several months. A lot of teachers, this nation has kind of adopted newer, more kind of college and career ready standards. We made that shift, but a lot of times what we're seeing now is that many students are not guaranteed grade level instruction and materials. So that was a big point of the opportunity myth. That we've noticed some of that in our schools, going around and kind of digging into why are we flat. So that's where most of the gist of this interim assessment is, getting people to have professional learning community discussions, talking about student learning at the level of kind of the claims that they make. So are we meeting this standard? Am I able to do this kind of math operations, these kind of complex texts can access and discuss this. So more than anything, this is an opportunity. While we use MAP to monitor are kids growing, are they responding to their curriculum, these kind of assessments will allow us to have, again, teachers tied directly to their curriculum and their instruction that week or those few weeks or that month, and have discussions about student learning that is directly at the standard level, that is directly at the grade level, so that the hardest thing they don't see is a test at the end of the year that's much higher than kind of what they've been given to. So again, like Debbie said, all of us have been working together. A lot of schools, CNI, our assessment department, have done a lot of work kind of working on how do we roll this out so it's not just another test. I saw a great line today in an article or something that said, test less, assess more. So really, what are we doing? What is the state of this child's learning of our classroom instruction? And using that, again, and I don't want to beat it to death, but really directly tied to classroom instruction, directly tied to what's happening currently and how are students learning on that. And then again, what if they're not learning, what are we going to do about that? This will give us an opportunity to do that and to get the whole system on the same page again, whether you're at Juniper Elementary School or Huntsberger or Loader.
That's
great. And then just very quickly, so we will be rolling these benchmark assessments out for this next school year, and we're going to pilot it in 16 schools, 16 of our elementary schools. And it really is quality assessments, but what I don't want the board to misinterpret is that this is going to be another assessment. And so we've been working with our assessment department and really taking a deep look as far as what this looks like into a daily classroom process for our teachers, because what we know is that the instruction happens with that teacher. And so when Ben is talking about what this looks like in a professional learning community, this is an absolute need for our teachers to be able to take a look at what my student is doing and having that informed discussion with my colleagues at the grade level.
So great. That's great. Okay. Yes.
And one last comment on this particular slide is that second bullet under strategic activities in motion. And if you'll recall from your last regular meeting when Robert Sidford gave you an update on digital curriculum, definitely a strategic activity in motion as we speak, which I think goes back to the consistency the consistency and quality and access for all students and all teachers across the district. So
Great.
Wanted to highlight that.
Okay. Any questions on that before we move on? Okay. Thank you.
And I'm going to jump in again on this particular slide. So this metric measures how our kids are doing by the end of third grade, and definitely is tied into current Read by Grade 3 or Nevada Kids Read expectations. As I mentioned earlier, we're closely tracking some potential key amendments to Read by Grade 3. But what I wanted to do here was again highlight the that third bullet under the highlight section. There is again the alignment. We're continually talking about alignment, consistency. So a teacher or a principal or a student isn't hearing one thing from one person and something totally different. And I'm really proud of the work that we've done even just this school year. And a challenge, which again we're tracking very closely if there's a change in this particular legislation, is the non-instructional mandates that are tied to Read by Grade 3 Nevada Kids Read around reporting. It takes a lot of time for our school sites to do that reporting. It's very important. We don't argue that it's very important that our teachers and our parents and families understand how kids are doing. But we're hoping, I'm hoping that there's going to be some changes with that. And then the third area there, the strategic activities in motion. Again, we've put our note there about our digital curriculum work. And then multiple departments that are working to ensure, again, consistency and message around the K-5 English Language Arts adoption process.
Questions on that one? Okay, thank you. When we won't know the results of these SBAC tests until next October, is that correct?
Ben Hayes for the record. So yeah, we should know them in June.
Oh, June.
We would like
Okay.
them much earlier. I think I would like to kind of take the 30 seconds to say, now that we're wrapping up the SBAC or the Smarter Balance metrics, you heard Debbie say a lot about systems and departments working with each other. And when you, at first blush, you look at that and you're like, oh, that's a no-brainer. Everybody should be working together. We are and have been. But remember, this is only the third time we've gotten results from Smarter Balance data. And it's how our schools and our departments are responding to the curriculums that we got to adopt, math and now some early grades. Literacy adoption, but it's also responding to those data and seeing where kind of the gaps are, where kids are growing. We have the growth model for the second time. Finally, we've gotten 2 years worth of data of that. So I think what we'll see, and I alluded to this a little bit with President Holland the other day, I think we are going to start seeing the benefits of that work going on, that we can react to the data, put better systems in place. There's a palpable sense of kind of relief that we have an adoption in place. Troy and I spent an hour talking to a group of principals last month about what a difference it makes to have kind of something to pin down. And of course, they need to supplement and all that kind of stuff. But like I said, I think there's a palpable relief that there's something, a foundational adoption out there, and there is genuinely data-driven and kind of what I would say smart planning going on when Debbie says that.
Great.
Thanks, Ben. All right, so we're going to move forward here to a metric that measures how our fifth graders and eighth graders do on our state science assessment. This slide, couple times I've come forward to you to report, has not changed too much. This is a slide that doesn't tell the whole story about the hard work that's happening to make up for deficiencies in the materials that we do have. I think over 20 years, right? I think since we've been able to do that, adopt science materials. If we're able to do so, this is the next adoption that will come forward, and we would look to start this process in approximately a year from now for science. So with that being said, also want to give a shout out to our Northwest Regional Professional Development Program and WRPDP, who work super hard with many of our schools to get good quality science materials, hands-on materials, project-based learning materials into the hands of our students. Teacher professional learning in this area is largely dependent, I would say, on grants. A lot of those through NWRPDP. So we try to, make the best use of when we bring teachers together. Sometimes it's a struggle. We don't want to bring kids or teachers out of the classroom with their students. So we try to find time where we can do that and get our teachers, in for ongoing professional learning. Again, I think the third bullet under strategic activity motions, again, is getting our current science curriculum loaded into our digital curriculum. And then also when we load that curriculum in, there are good, as Ben talked about, supplementary materials that we can link to and that we can include as well for our teachers. And this is one area where you see a lot of that, I think, again, given the age of our current adopted materials.
And aren't some of our materials missing? I mean, they're not aligned with the standards. We're so far behind with our materials.
And that would be correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
I had the opportunity to meet with staff from the NWRPDP, and just want to echo your shout out to them for the great support they give to our district and the FOSS kits that are wonderful, because for many folks, they didn't go into teaching with a really strong science background. Yes, many did, but many didn't, and so it's intimidating, I know, to teach science. It would be for me, for sure. And so those FOSS kits are really a great value to our teachers. So I just want to thank them for continuing to support that for us. And we have a lot of work to do. Okay.
All right, good afternoon. For the record, Troy Parks, Area Superintendent. This next metric is for our sophomores. We want to make sure that they are getting their core credits, that is 2 English, 2 math, 2 science, and 1 social studies. We all remember being sophomores, and that can be a rough year.
Some of us remember, Troy.
Just yesterday. So what we have put into place is at the sites, our school teams meet, and from freshmen on, they track credits, freshman through senior year. Area superintendents have follow-up meetings with sites and their teams. We verify and we ask them what resources they need, and I can tell you consistently each quarter, no matter what, those meetings occur. Additionally, then we have district level follow-up meetings to talk about in general and aggregate, what are we needing at our schools to help support that credit attainment. Some of the challenges we are facing, there's going to be 23 credits required now going into next year for our sophomores. We're also in a transition phase from A+ to Edgenuity, and there is an opportunity here, though. We have learned that with Edgenuity we can accrue credits on the front end as well as do credit recovery. So it's kind of a challenge and an opportunity as well. Additionally, want to highlight currently in motion, we have academic plans for every student. Again, when we go to our schools, they're able to show us exactly where their students are at and what credits they need, what plans they have in place. Clearly, you're aware of our intersession, Saturday school, after school. And then Ben and his team are always finding better ways for us to quickly access data at any point when it comes to credit attainment via BIG, and our principals use that quite often.
So really the takeaway for this is just to understand that there is a very proactive approach when we're talking about our high schools and what our principals and our teachers and our counselors are doing every day in our high schools. And they start with the freshmen. We're working very hard to make sure that as soon as those freshmen start having some credit deficiencies, that we're right on top of them, and that our counselors and our teachers and our principals are reaching out and finding out what those students need in order to make sure that by their sophomore year they're on track. And that takes an enormous amount of time. And our area superintendents and our other principal supervisors work very closely with their schools to make sure that they are on track.
Yes, Dr. Taylor.
Thank you. Dr. McNeil or Dr. Parks, perhaps, that last bullet, the third bullet on the strategic activities in motion, as you know, we have a few new trustees. You want to talk a little bit about what BIG is and Portrait of a Graduate for them?
So I'll do the Portrait of a Graduate, and then I'll throw this on either over to Troy or Ben for the BIG, for the Business Intelligence Gateway.
Thank you.
But Portrait of a Graduate, it's very exciting, and we will be actually bringing this to you to our work session with the Board of Trustees in a much deeper way in May 30th, I think, 31st. Around the strategic plan. But a Portrait of a Graduate, just in short, is really the pathway. So when I enter into pre-kindergarten, into the Washoe County School District, what's going to happen during my pre-kindergarten, and then targets along that pathway. So in 3rd grade, 5th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, 12th grade, what am I getting? What are the options available to me as a graduate? So when I leave the Washoe County School District, I have a full bucket of options ready to either go into post-secondary, career, the military, but I have my options ready to go. So when I get that certificate at the end, when I walk across that stage, I am ready to go. And so really this is all about what I have as a graduate for the Washoe County School District. So it really is a portrait. And so it's very exciting work, and we will be coming to you again how this ties into the strategic plan, and then also around the budgeting process as well. So stay tuned. Very exciting.
That's great.
And the BIG, the unfortunately named Business Intelligence Gateway, is our data warehouse. So internally safe behind militarized firewalls. So it's safe data, but it's for any of our educators in the system. We can pull up how at any given one of these metrics or several other metrics, we have an early warning system and a lot of those, how we can see we're performing as a district at any given moment. It's updated nightly with live data, so attendance, anything you can think of. And the way we've designed it is so that we can start with a big metric, so how many kids are on track to graduate, so to speak. But then we can dig down and drill, and we've designed it purposely this way, that you can drill all the way through grade level, or if student populations, if you want to kind of make sure that we're treating all, or getting all kids equitable access, but ultimately down to the student. And what how that's slashed into Portrait of a Graduate is at the student level, we have a student profile page, or a graduation on track profile page, and it has a picture of the child, all the courses that they've taken in their high school career, and how they're doing along their pathway to graduation. So are they getting the appropriate math credits, the appropriate English credits? And then also we're building it out to make sure that we can get them all the different pathways to college and career ready diplomas, and the different endorsements, so bilingual endorsement, CTE endorsement, and all that comes with those. It's taken a ton of work, and again, it's kind of a cross-functional team. Debbie's group with curriculum instruction, we've done a lot of work to standardize course codes and all that, so that we can truly tell if a child is missed algebra the second semester of their senior year, are they taking it now, or do we need a little flag going up? And if they're taking it on correspondence or on online education, we've gotten the data now, working with everybody, to know that the child's taking care of it and their work is in progress. So we've done this for a number of years. I would say now, this year, we've got a new report that's more advanced than ever. So all of that is to say, when Dr. Park says our schools are looking at every day and every week and every month to see who's on track and who's not, that starts the second they walk into the building. We know kind of, are they on track? We have an early warning system that flags they might be at risk, so let's wrap around them, and different things like that. So again, the point is it's an internal safe system, but it's a data warehouse that we can combine all our student achievement data, HR data, business data together, and really kind of get into the analytics stuff, which is how we build the on track and all of that.
So who's accountable in the high school for that consistent monitoring for every student's academic plan? Is an overworked counselor trying to do that that we have too few of?
So, in actuality, anybody who's been a principal knows that ultimately it's the principal's responsibility. Normally what we see is that when we go meet with the teams, it is the counselors who, either by grade level or alphabetics, they take responsibility for assuring that every single, yes, literally hundreds, yes. But it's usually a team at the high school sites that mentors and tracks and works with students to make sure that they're on pathway.
Yeah, it's a really excellent goal, and it's a great strategy to be doing. I know our capacity is really stretched to be able to provide that individual attention for each student, but it is the way that we get them to the finish line. So just my hat's off to everybody that's working on that. Thank you.
And I don't want to forget our graduate advocates as well. We have graduate advocates in our high schools, and they do the yeoman's job as far as making sure that home visits, knocking on doors, our re-engagement office goes out, does home visits, and really gets the parents involved as well as the student as far as why it's so important to make sure that you're at school, making sure that you do have these options by the time you graduate.
Great. Yes, Dr. Taylor.
If I may, I would just say I've in the, I guess a little bit over 4 years I've been on the board. I've gotten the chance to, that was right before, I think, or right after the data warehouse was really being rolled out, and so on. And I just want to commend you for all the hard work. I mean, I know we have a lot of students that we're keeping up with, but the early warning system is something that I'm particularly pleased about, so we can catch those kids, those students that may have trouble, that may need some extra help, that might need some wraparound, before it's too late. So even though there are hundreds, and we certainly don't have enough counselors, if we can narrow down the ones to really, really kind of red flag and pay attention to, it helps maybe save them a little bit of that as well, which we know they can use any bit of help that they can get. But just to know that we're doing everything we can for those students that can still make it, with a little extra help, they can still get there. I think it's really something to feel proud of.
Thank you for saying that. It's fun work, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say the people actually doing the brain-smoking, mind-bending work, Brandon and Irene in IT and JT Stark in our office, they're working today feverishly going through it. And again, I can name 15 other people, Bryn LaPenta, Kendra Fox, and everyone else who's collaborating to make it accurate. So thank you for saying that. We try to make it relevant and useful.
Great. Okay, thank you. And again, we know if these kids aren't on track in the 10th grade, they're not going to be on track in the 12th grade unless we do something, unless we intervene actively. So I did have the pleasure of doing a home visit. Years ago, we used to have people in the community help with those home visits, and I did some of those, and it was very powerful, very powerful. We did it too late in those days. We did it when kids were already seniors, but now you all are doing it way early, and it's great. Thank you. Okay.
For the record, Paul LaMarca, Chief Ombudsman and Strategies Officer. I'm going to talk about 1.2.1, reducing the achievement gap, and just hope you all had a great Easter weekend. What I'd like to highlight is our graduation rate. We've had annual increases. Last year we were flat, but overall we had annual increases for many years, and at the same time we've seen a narrowing of the achievement gap. We've seen remarkable increases with our special education population. And we have reason to be optimistic about the future. We think we'll see annual increase overall. We think we will continue to see a narrowed gap. I'd also like to highlight access to rigorous curriculum. We see that as well with our AP/IB dual credit and CTE courses. We have more kids who traditionally weren't involved in those in that coursework having access to that coursework. And that's one of the reasons why we're optimistic about ongoing increases in graduation and narrowing achievement gaps. I think the challenge I'd like to highlight is that ongoing process of building a climate of high expectations that really goes far beyond just saying we have high expectations for all students. When Ms. Beiersdorf and Mr. Hayes talked about alignment, so the climate is very much a part of instructional practice. These are not separate things. And so that's part of how our group gets involved in this alignment. It's providing a rigorous and relevant curriculum. It's providing an environment in which kids feel welcome, fosters a sense of belongingness. They want to be a part of the school. That's how we're going to break down these barriers and narrow gaps. In terms of some of the strategies, I'd like to build off what Dr. McNeil said. With the Family School Partnerships Department, as well as our Equity and Diversity Department, we have student graduation advocates, family graduation advocates. We receive referrals from schools. We receive referrals from families. We use the early warning system proactively to identify kids who, for lack of a better term, are at risk. They might be at risk because we haven't traditionally served them well, but we like to get a sense of who they are early as they transition into high school, and we engage with that family right away proactively to keep them on that portrait, on that pathway to success. And I think that has made a big difference for the school district. The other piece I'd like to highlight is the Equitable Access Task Force. Dr. McNeil and Ms. Beiersdorf are leading this effort. It's a cross-departmental effort. I think typically when we think of racism, when we think of discrimination, when we think of prejudice, we think of individuals. And that's true, and we need to eliminate that. But we have to also look at the system as a whole. We need to look at our institution, and that's really what this committee does. This committee has taken on two important projects this year. We've looked at our application process to a variety of schools to make sure we're not creating barriers for students to get into the few options that we have. We've also looked at our fee structures. Do all students have access to AP Calculus, to whatever course it might be that they want to get into? Or are we creating some sort of a barrier between them? And we're trying to eliminate that. I think this group will do great things in the future. I believe we may take on athletics and access to extracurricular opportunities, which will be a very interesting discussion to have. Those are the things I'd like to highlight. You have some data, you have some trend data in your packet around graduation rates. I would just say that that's just 2 years, and I would really like you to look further behind. Look at 6-year trends. This district has been doing something that I don't think very many of any other districts can say in the nation in terms of sustained growth over a long period of time. Thank you.
And just to very briefly add to Dr. LaMarco's comments, so today we actually had our very last, for this year, our Equitable Access Task Force meeting, and it was very exciting. We had great participation. We had some new faces there, and the job of this committee has been tremendous, and Superintendent Davis was there to give some closing comments to the team today. But the other part that this team did the work is around prerequisites for courses in high schools and looking around those barriers. So letters of recommendation and making sure that those prerequisites are consistent across all of our schools, which they were not. And that was the very first barrier that this team tackled, and it was a huge effort on this Equitable Access Task Force. And because of this work and because how it is important, I've requested from the Chief of Staff and the Superintendent that we can actually come back in May and do a presentation to the Board of Trustees around this phenomenal team.
Great.
So, stay tuned.
All right, we shall.
Right.
So again, Deborah Beiersdorf, for the record. So this particular metric, I'm so proud of this, the work that has gone into this metric and where we're at now. This metric measures our EL students and the percentage that are exited from EL services by the end of their sixth grade. So they could have been exited in 4th grade or 3rd grade or 6th grade. So we made some really good gains at the end of last school year. As I'm often reminded by our Director of English Language Development, she's in the back, Janine wave too. There she is, you know Janine. Language acquisition takes time. This will be an interesting one to see as it goes forward. I think it may ebb and flow a little bit as we build kids up, we exit, and then we're building up again. But anyways, some highlights that I wanted to point out. Again, that first bullet, the ELD model, that's been, when I say very well received on that slide, I truly mean that. It's been, the beauty of this model is sometimes schools, they don't have access to Zoom funding or they don't have access to Title I funding. And we've been able to provide extra support to those schools who don't often see extra help with coaching or in the classroom working alongside co-teaching with our regular ed teachers. So that's been I think a great gain with our ELD model. So we're moving out to 10 more elementary schools, or bringing in, I should say, 10 more elementary schools for the 1920 school year. And then Title III funding is super important in providing professional learning opportunities for teachers to get their endorsement. There it's called ELAD, English Language Arts Development. I think that's, if I'm correct, what ELAD stands for. Anyways, to provide funding to help teachers get that endorsement. Challenges, again, language acquisition takes time. It's complex. And then strategic activities in motion. I think I'd like to focus on that second bullet and give a shout out to many of our principals, especially our principals of our Zoom schools who have come together this year in a professional learning community and collegials to take a deep dive into their language acquisition data and working together and sharing ideas and support for each other, because work's not hard. There's a lot of focus, and rightfully so, but there's a lot of focus when you're a Zoom school and how you're using your funding and what kind of results you're getting. So Janine and some leaders out of our Department of Professional Learning lead that work with that particular group of principals, and I think that will continue next year as well.
Can you just explain for me again, how does an individual student exit? Is there a test, or how does that work?
So that's called the access test.
Okay.
And we give that starting closely after the beginning of the year. second semester. I can't see but we don't have the results back yet. May, I think, is when we look to get the results, but students need to achieve at a certain level on the access text. But then once we exit, we just don't, let them go. We closely monitor how they're doing at K-12, how our kids are doing. So.
And that's a standardized test. That is it a national test? Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yes, Dr. Taylor.
Thank you, Madam President. Deborah, do you ever see students that exit and then have to go back in?
Oh, I don't. I'm looking and I'm going to say, and she's shaking her head, no. No.
Okay. Just wondering. Because I know you monitor and you stay with them, so I'm wondering.
Yeah, because we would move away from that assessment for those students. But it certainly doesn't mean that kids don't still struggle, and we still, high quality tier 1 instruction with supports built in are so important. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions on that? Okay, and I know this was a new model that was debated, and so thank you for sharing the success stories, and we'll keep it rolling forward. So good, thank you. We'll see how it goes this year, but sounds like it's going really well.
This next objective, 1.5.1, has to do with remediation rates. So specifically, remediation rates for our graduates when they enter the Nevada system of higher ed. And specifically what it measures is how many of our recent graduates, so within a year, go to any of the NSHE schools and system of higher ed schools and are placed in either remedial English course or what they call a stretch remedial course, or a remedial math course, or both English and math, but those are the subject areas. Our data, typically the most where this happens, or the heaviest area, I guess, is going into math only, followed by math and English, and there's many fewer that are just remedial English, if that makes sense. It's a really, it's a compelling metric, but it's troublesome. We want to know how our kids are doing once they leave our graduation state and how they're doing in our local public education system. Unfortunately, the data, so I remember talking to this board several months ago when we did an update, I believe in October, and they were still kind of not, or I was still not confident in their data. We've worked with them a lot since, and we are confident they've fixed the most recent year and the 2 years before that. So what you see on the table there is what we think is the truth as far as our collaboration goes. Unfortunately, with these data, it doesn't tend to be as actionable as we like it, especially for a strategic plan metric. So the latest and most recent data we have is for the class of 2016. So it's hard to set targets based on work that is occurring strategically right now. So by way of example, we've done a lot of work collaborating with UNR and TMCC on different ways to get into credit-bearing courses, so submitting a writing portfolio or different things like that. The bulk of that work and kind of policy shift was done for the class of 2017, so those wouldn't show up in these data. The legislature, last legislative session, passed a law that if you're not deemed kind of college-ready, or at least on the college-ready pathway, your senior year, you have to take a full credit load instead of taking 4 or minimum requirements. That won't show up until a few years down the road. So it's a good metric, and it's one that we like. It's just hard for a strategic plan to kind of target set. So that's something that we'll have homework as a board and as staff to set targets for the October setting. But it's hard to set in the year 2019 targets for 2017 and 2018, if that makes sense, and knowing that we might not see the result of the targets for a few years. But it is something we definitely pay attention. Again, we're always looking, and I've been digging into these data a lot lately to try to figure out if we can get some leading indicators of the ACT data. I think the core credit data is a really good one to look at. We use our PSAT data and AP data. So I want to build something leading that we can do that so that the targets kind of take care of themselves in the strategic plan. Does that make sense? So the data that you have there, I will say this is an area, so as a district, it's really disheartening to see 47%, 46.7% in our, but that is not common or not unique to Washoe County School District. So if you look, and I'll send this in the superintendent's highlights, this report that NSHE puts out, we're better than nearly any district in the state save for Douglas County. So by way of comparison, Washoe is 46.7 for class of 2016. Clark County, it was 55% needing remediation. Carson, 48%. The best data, and again, it's not apples to apples in every state, but the best data I can find is 43.9% nationwide for students going into public universities.
Just really
yeah, it's a national.
Yeah.
But as far as getting kids college ready, like I said, there's several mini collaborations and an overall, what I would describe as a pretty robust collaboration with the University of Nevada and with TMCC, and kind of policy work as well with NSHE as a whole. So you've heard us talk about early college, kind of offering kids to take remedial classes before they graduate high school so that they're able to take credit-bearing courses. A lot of work, and you heard from it on the Equitable Task Force. There's a whole bunch of work in getting students, more and more students accessing advanced courses, whether it's AP or IB or dual credit or CTE, all of which can lead to college credits. Kristen, Dr. McNeil talked about Profile of a Graduate, using that work and kind of, if you can picture that work as an umbrella, like I would love to see that hand in hand with the strategic plan and what we update with that strategic plan. And then underneath that, staff work of how counselors do academic planning and schools do academic planning and how we can put those data into BIG and make it more meaningful. So there's probably 3 or 4 or 5 different projects going on that all will merge into that work. So and the equity work and kind of eliminating what Dr. Lamarca talked to earlier, these obstacles that we don't think about that the system presents that serve to kind of block access, unfortunately, a lot of times. Getting rid of those, I think all of that will lead to better remediation rates. And remember, we also, over the last 6 years or 10 years, whatever you want to choose, we've increased graduation rates while not sacrificing rigor. I know we've gotten rid of exit exams as a state, but if you look at Washoe's graduation rates, they've increased, but what has also increased is the percentage of students reaching advanced or honors diplomas. And most of those, I would say 3/4 of those are honors diplomas where you have to have a certain GPA and some advanced coursework. So this is, I think, like I said, it's a very compelling metric. Unfortunately, it's not really actionable, but I think we can strategically put in enough work so that the targets kind of take care of themselves.
Okay. Trustee Cotto.
Yeah, so working at the university, I do see this as well. One thing that I think we could do as a district is to communicate to our students the importance of getting the best score possible on their ACT, SAT. Because at the university, if you have a 3.0 core, you're automatically admitted, and your test score really has no bearing on your admission, just placement. So you get a 3.1, you get a 16 on the ACT, you just take it and you go forward, and then you're going to have to remediate, and it looks like they're not college ready, whereas maybe it was the first time I took the test, got nervous, take it again, now they can get a 21, but they're only doing that for placement because they've already been admitted. And the flip side, I always advise students, don't keep taking the tests because you don't want to overplace. I've seen students that they overplace, they go into math, and they get like a punch in the face, and then I got to go back down because they weren't successful. So I definitely can see the difficulties with this, but I would say for our counselors to encourage our students, take the ACT, SAT more than once, because the first time is not always great because you get nervous. It's the first time. If you don't like that, take it, but then go take the AccuPlacer. You can submit a writing sample to the English department at the university to place higher in English. Maybe you shouldn't be in English 98, and then you're in English 101, then you're good. You don't remediate. You're college ready. So there are a few things that we can do in-house to help our students and then encourage them to prepare for these tests. So.
Great comments. And did you say, Ben, that the NSHE doesn't provide the data to us on an individual basis, so we're just getting an aggregate amount or aggregate percentage, which doesn't help us to target what do we need to be doing differently. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, we don't get, and this has long been a complaint for principals when it's attested for or reported for accountability, that we don't get to see the kids that showed up and went to remedial courses. We get kind of bulk numbers, as you said, and we get at the school level so we can see if we're improving, but we don't get to see those data.
Well, good advice from Trustee Caudill. Those are great strategies.
Yeah, I should mention it is a great strategy. A couple other things we're doing with ACT over the last couple of years is more, not necessarily boot camp preparation, but taking the test a little bit more serious. I mean, when you do a census or every single kid takes it, there's going to be circumstances where a child is in different transitions of their life and they're not going to take it as seriously. That's going to happen, and we can encourage them to take it again a second time. But a lot of times kids have been accepted the summer before or something, they don't. So getting them to take it seriously, but then also doing more. Dr. Aird did a professional development for a bunch of curriculum, or with a bunch of academic folks this summer, on how this relates to our standards, how this relates to end of course exams and data that we already have. So just not test prep boot camp, a little bit of that. You can't do the ACT without that. But more preparedness of, we're talking about a college ready assessment here. And now that kids, this isn't unintended consequences, or perhaps it was intended, but if a child knows that if they don't get to the college ready level, they can't take 4 classes their senior year, they have to take the full 6 or 7, they're going to try a little bit harder on it as well.
Yeah. Great. Okay. I know we're moving out of the academic piece, and I'm wondering, trustees, would you like to take a quick break before we go into the next section? Okay, let's, can we take 10 minutes? Is that enough? Okay, we'll keep going to the next section in 10 minutes. We'll be in recess. Thank you. Back in session. Ms. Emily, nice to see you. Thank you.
Nice to see you as well. Mike and I were joking that we
Nice to see you too, Mike. I'm sorry. Sorry, that was...
Oh, Mike's here too.
Yeah. It is nice.
We were joking that we should invite some people from the audience to fill more of the chairs like the last group. But
yeah.
just us today. I'm actually going to, well, thank you for having us. We're talking about 3 metrics under Goal 2, effective personnel. And I'm actually going to turn most of it over to Dr. Paul because they're talent acquisition metrics, but I'm certainly here to help support the conversation.
Okay.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, President Simon Holland, Superintendent Davis, members of the board. My name is Mike Paul, for the record, Executive Director of Human Resources. So the first metric that we are going to report on here is 2.1.1. This decreased the first day vacancies by 2%, and I'm happy to say that we have accomplished that. And you can see with this school year, we had 23 first day vacancies. So that is a reduction of 10 over last year, and it's very nice to see that we've had a steady reduction over the last 5 years. So we are very proud of that. One of the highlights that I want to point out there is the second bullet, and trying to become innovative in our recruiting and doing some different things outside of the box. One example I want to give on that. Last week, Emily and I went to a teacher recruiting fair in Boise, and to try to do something different than the traditional recruiting fairs, we decided to take our kids with us. Oh, great. And so we had Gavin, Emily's son, and my son Johnny with us, and they're both in elementary school. And right away, you could tell it made an impact because the teachers there, the student teacher candidates, where we had the whispers and the smiles and the points and everything as we came into the room, and it definitely attracted some traffic by our table, and they were right out front and being the ambassadors for Washoe County and the total salesmen, and we had a lot of traffic. So I'm sorry, Mr. Codhill, but I think we're going to be embracing with open arms some of the Bronco Nation coming from Boise State. But if they're coming, yeah. Oh, and you too, Dr. Taylor. I'm sorry, but Bronco Nation might be coming our way. But if they're going to be some quality teachers, we'll take them from anywhere that we can get for sure.
That's great.
But thinking of those outside the box recruiting strategies, and definitely all of those districts around that we're trying to recruit as well, we're even pointing and whispering and smiling and saying, oh, that's a great idea, that's a great idea. So,
well, big thanks to Gavin and Johnny. We appreciate that.
And they absolutely loved it too.
Oh,
so
that's fun.
They're already asking to go on more trips, so we'll have to see how that works.
Before we move off that, Dr. Taylor.
I just want to make sure clear that, so we did not pay for a family vacation.
No.
Just wanted to.
And nor did we violate any child labor laws.
None. Really important to note.
Yes.
So I was going to say, it was a job fair where we had an opportunity to get up and give a little presentation at the beginning and tell a little bit about our district. So I got up and introduced myself and the kids, and I said, in Washoe we like to start our CTE programs early, and so I brought my best recruiters, and So yeah, they really had a great time, and it was cute because they had T-shirts that had like the Uncle Sam picture on it, and it said, "I want you to be my teacher."
Oh,
and so
wow.
they did a really great job. So and they bargained with us, right? So we had to buy them lunch and dinner, of course.
Wow.
And it was a whirlwind trip, and I kind of laughed with my husband when I got home. I said, Gavin always seems very mature to me. He's 10, but I could tell that it was a whirlwind trip and a long day for him because he was crabby on the flight.
And we never are. So
And we actually did have to have the discussion of child labor laws because Johnny asked how much he was getting paid for this. And we said, no, you got to hold on. You got to understand some child labor laws that we have to go over here.
That's great. That's great.
You get out of school for the day, so that's your payment
good.
right there.
Yeah.
So still have to do your homework, but you get out of school for the day.
Oh,
yeah, so
that
it
was great.
really was a great trip,
idea.
and we got several good leads that we're following up on. So
Excellent.
hopefully it's going to turn out well.
Can I ask a question on this? So when we say unfilled certified positions, that means that if the position is filled by a long-term sub, we're counting that as a filled position. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so there's a lot of long-term subs that are embedded in this number.
There are, and typically, I would say there's a good mix of long-term subs that are pending licensure. So,
Okay, good.
The turnaround time on licensing at the start of the school year is usually between 8 to 10 weeks.
Oh, boy.
And so, any of the hires that we do in July, if the folks have not already gotten their license in progress, will likely start as a long-term sub pending licensure. So that's the reason that we back a lot of those positions out of this number. So this is true vacancies.
Okay, good. All right. Good.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay.
So the next one that we have, 2.1.2, is increasing the diversity amongst new hires. And when you look at this one, some of the challenges, you can see that we have definitely increased this by approximately 4% from this year over last year. When we look at the diversity categories, we don't look at this as traditionally ethnic or racial diversity, which the first category you see there, we definitely did have quite a few diversity hires. The number looks quite inflated here, but as you can see with the asterisk, this is self-identifying, and they could identify in more than one category. We have male gender, the ethnic and racial diversity, multilingual, veteran, so we count all of those in our diversity column, because the education profession is, predominantly female with education, and so definitely that male gender is a good category that we try to target as well. With lack of resources to try to do a broad outreach, that can be limited. So, we always try to keep that in mind as well. But we are definitely trending in the right direction for sure for increasing our new hires in all of that.
What?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President. Are these, so if we have a male who is multilingual, will he appear twice on these?
Yes.
Is there any way we can get what's this?
Sort of a net.
Yeah, something so that they don't double count or even triple count maybe. Could be a veteran. It could be a quadruple count.
They could be in every category. I'll have to look at how we're able to access the data and how much we can parse that out. But yeah, we can certainly see if we can unique identifier.
I think great job, and I agree that in education we know a male teacher is significantly underrepresented. So I think those areas of diversity that bring different experiences, different perspectives, different ways of thinking that we don't have, that's really what diversity is. It's not what the picture looks like. So
absolutely,
this a fantastic job.
Thank you.
That's great. To what do you attribute the great results?
I think a lot of it has to do with some of the innovative recruiting that Mike talked about before, right? So we're trying to figure out all the ways that we can cast a wide net and get our message out about all of the opportunities that we have to the larger community, because we have such a diverse community, and helping people think not just about traditional teaching opportunities, right, but even CTE opportunities or opportunities in ESP positions. And so people, I think, we exist as a prevalent entity in the community, but people don't always make the connection between the work they do and how they might also serve students. And so being able to get the message out via a lot of different channels, I think is helping to drive some of these numbers. I think what Mike touched on before, though, is an important consideration, right? So what we are doing, we're doing on relatively limited resources. So we invested some money last year in a billboard campaign, some freeway billboards. You might have seen those. But those obviously, those types of things cost money. And so with the limited resources we have, we're able to get a certain amount of reach. But beyond that, if we want to continue to expand our reach, we're trying to maximize free resources, but that's certainly a consideration. And we sit down on an annual basis and say, okay, what did we do last year, and where do we think we got the most bang for our buck, and what other ideas do we have this year? And so we're trying to create a balance between those sources where we get what we feel like is a good return and then potential new sources. So,
that's great. Okay. Yes, Vice President Raymond.
So the numbers here are all new hires, not just our certified teachers?
Correct.
And I remember we talked about this at some point about whether we wanted to look at the certified teachers. I feel like we had some conversation about that, because it wasn't some of this goal to also have that diversity in our classrooms. So is there a way to see what this looks like for just the certified teachers?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. We can get that information. And I think when we look, because we've looked at the certified piece for some other things too, for example, grant applications, and where we see the most return on our efforts in increasing diversity among certified staff has been in our Grow Your Own programs. So like ARL and through the diversity scholarship programs that we offer. Those are smaller scale programs, but the teachers that we see coming through those channels is, I want to say off the top of my head, it's about 4 or 5 percentage points higher than what we see coming through to traditional teacher preparation channels. So we can certainly get some more
I'd
drill
just be
down
curious
data.
to see, because if we've increased like the male new hires, but they're not actually coming in as teachers, they're just, being absorbed in other departments, then that'd be something I think I'd be interested in seeing more.
Yeah. And I think too, when you look at the goals under Goal 2, or the objectives under Goal 2, many of them play nicely together, if you will. So, for example, increasing the diversity, like you're talking about the pipeline and where are we seeing those increases happen. We also have a goal we'll talk about in just a moment of ESPs and substitutes becoming certified staff, right? And so even if we don't necessarily see the diversity increasing among the certified ranks right now, we're seeing some increases in that pipeline, and if it's happening here, eventually it will feed into certified.
Great, thank you. That rings a bell that I remember the pipeline part of the conversation. We don't have complete control over, what applications we receive for what positions, and a lot of that is work that has to be done, I know, on further out and will impact this report maybe in 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Trustee Caudill.
Yeah, thank you. Is there any way to get the percentage of student teachers that end up staying here and being hired into our classrooms? I'd be interested in that, because if we have student teachers that are teaching here and then leaving to go teach somewhere else, I think that would be good for us to know why, and is there an overarching reason that we can tackle to keep them here to teach in our schools?
Yep,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think we also keep data on how many teachers are still here at 5 years. And I know that might be something in the future we sort of add to our strategic plan mix, because I know that's an important threshold that we want people to be able to stay. So
I think we report on that in October.
Okay. Good.
That's a number, right? Retention. We have a
Retention number.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to follow the rule. Keep going.
All right.
I'm not supposed to talk.
You can talk. Speak up.
You. My boss said I could talk. So I think something, and I have this in my notes that we talk about. Trustee Caudill talked about, are we hiring from UNR student teachers? And we know what that population looks like, right? So we end up with competing measures. Is our overall measure to hire qualified individuals? And then we put these measures because principals actually hire. We create a qualified selection pool.
We do.
The principals actually interview for what best fits their school, and we don't direct them in how to hire. But we have initiatives that say we will hire this, this, and this, and that becomes a competing measure. Because if I hire all the graduates from UNR, then I'm not hiring substitutes because we don't have that many positions, especially if we're working on retaining. So we got to talk about what those look like, or is it that we have, I'm not talking about the diversity one,
Right.
I'm talking about where we hire from, because it's impossible to hire all the UNLV graduates and hire sub, and hire ARL though.
UNLV. We won't be doing
Oh, sorry, UNR. But we might get some from UNLV, thank you very much.
We do.
But
A little.
internal, we do. We see where they all come from. HBCUs, we hire. But with that being said, we compete, and it sends a message: you have to hire this to meet the metrics versus hire the best candidate. So we got to talk about that, because that sends principals in a tizzy when we have a pool of qualified individuals. The principals actually go in the pool and hire the best fit for their school. We're not saying you need to hire an ARL candidate because you don't have any of those on your campus. Or we're saying hire the best individual that will drive student achievement in your building. So we need to talk about that, even though that was on my list. It was just driving me nuts that we were going in this whole circle, but not addressing competing measures of where we hire qualified individuals.
Well, and that's always an issue when we're trying to change the complement of teachers, because it comes back to culture in the organization and making sure that we're valuing, across the board, we're valuing all of those things, as we must on diversity initiatives and as we must on making sure that we're inspiring our staff to reach higher. So I agree that they are competing initiatives, and they're all really important. And we need to make sure that throughout the district, people understand that what are the lenses through which I'm looking at this applicant, and how can I look at this applicant as a whole person that can help us meet some of our goals. So that's all. Trustee Caudill.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think what I was more getting to is not that we're hiring all the UNR students, but do we have good student teachers that are working in our schools and not even applying? They're just leaving. And so if there's reasons for that, I think it'd be good for us to know. If they are applying, but they're not the best candidate, that's great. But if we have good teachers that are student teaching here and they're choosing to leave for X, Y, and Z, some of it might be they're just from California and they just want to go back. Or it could be that their experience was really poor and they're just leaving. I think that is something that we should take a look at, and it may not make any difference, but we might find some patterns that we want to take a look at and see if we can retain these teachers. I don't want to just hire because we need to hire, but if a UNR student's very qualified but they just choose not to work here in favor of another district after student teaching, it might be something that we would want to know on the reasoning for that. That's what I was getting at.
Well, perhaps, if I may, Madam President, just to maybe to jump on with my colleague, Trustee Caudill is saying, maybe what you're looking for then is those that student teach if they apply. Maybe not necessarily if we keep them, that might be a separate number, but it's the application. The interest in applying is what it sounds like you're getting at, right?
Not hires, application.
Yeah, this is your question, but it sounds like that kind of gets to what you're looking for better.
That you're right, because hiring is different. But if we have, 90% of our student teachers don't even apply for a position in the district, I think that'd be something we want to look at. 90%, just throwing out a number, I have no idea what the percentage is. Or it could be the people that, they want to be here, they apply to be here, or those that just want to go home. And that's not something we can control. It's more, can we control it? And if yes, then how can we make it better?
Yeah, I think you raise some great questions, and that's definitely data that our talent acquisition team looks at. And Dr. Janet Pullen keeps track of our interns in terms of placements and what happens to them after. So she has a pretty comprehensive understanding. And so we do see some trends, right, anecdotally, that I can share. There's certainly an element of folks who come here to go to school and then leave to go to other areas, or they're from rural communities, and so their goal is to get back to their rural community and serve as an educator. And then we see some other weird trends that we've really never been able to quite figure out, right? So, for example, interns that do their internship in the fall semester, and then they're eligible to be hired. We hire for the current year through the end of February. And so maybe they are in, long-term sub or paid intern type positions, and we just can't get them to apply for their license. And so, so they end up being hired the following year, right? Not the year that they're eligible in, but we're like, you can have job and benefits right now, right? So there's some weird anomalies like that. But we do track them over a longer period of time too. And then we continually revisit those lists. So even if you did go back to your rural community right out of college, what's your status today, right? Have you maybe moved back to Reno and are interested in opportunities? Or there might be particular schools that have particular specialized positions that you're interested in. So we do a lot of outreach to those folks too. So we definitely have a lot of data that we can refer back to, and we can get you some more information.
Great. Okay. Anything else on that? And is there any mentoring that goes on for those college of education students? Do they get a mentor who's an educator?
Absolutely. So during their internship experience, they have a lead teacher that they're assigned to, and then all of our new teachers get a mentor during the year one of their teaching experience.
Perfect. Good. Okay.
And then beyond if they need some additional support.
Okay. We can keep going.
Okay. So then the last one that we have here, 2.1.3. So this is the percent of new hires coming into certified positions from our ESP and substitute staff. So the first thing I want to say about this is, even though we show that it is in red, which is not what we want to see, there's a big point of data that I want to make sure that I emphasize here. We are showing that this is a decline from 56% to 51%. But I want to make sure that you understand that even though this is a decline in percentage, the number of people that we have going from our substitute ranks and ESP ranks to certified has increased by 74 people. So it's kind of a misrepresentation, I guess you could say, of the numbers when you take a look at this. So when you look at the total number, so we have 221 of our 430 new hires this year, so 51% went from ESPs and subs into certified. If you compare that to last year, we had 147 out of 261 new hires. So a dramatic increase in the total number of new hires. So that kind of throws off the percentage, but overall we had quite a few total number of people hired into the certified ranks. So that kind of plays with the percentage number there a little bit when you look at that overall. So I want to make sure that we're clear on that number there.
And that's impressive, and it's so great that many ESPs to certified and subs to certified. That's outstanding. So
I have a question.
Yes.
So when principals go into the hiring pool, do they know the difference between a UNR student, that's a student teacher, a certified, or an ARL?
So more than likely, yes, because of the work experience and licensure page in the application. So an ARL candidate is probably going to show not any teaching or student teaching experience, depending on how they've listed their pre-service work, and they'll likely show either pending or no licensure at all. So the other thing that we do is note in the comments when they're eligible for hiring pool status, it'll typically say, ARL candidate eligible for XYZ subject.
Do we capture who they look at? I'm trying to bridge a gap between how do we get people to higher numbers versus when they go in. Because as a former principal, I just looked through applications, right, and I interviewed. But if we're trying to reach a target, how do we do that?
So we get information on the back end in terms of the interview report form and who they decided to interview based on who applied, and then the selected candidate. So they list a reason for non-selection on the interview report form, but we don't have a good way right now to catalog all of that data.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on.
So that was the last one that we had.
All right, thank you. Oh, Vice President Raymond.
So the target of 57.3, we established that, or you established that, whoever, is it not this target?
Yeah, it was an increase of 1% from last year was the target.
Okay. Do you feel that what we established for this goal, the target, is that something we need to look at in the future for adjustment, or do you think that still is a good target, the 1% increase? I mean, if from what I'm hearing you say, this was a good number, but it is red, and so I think, this was a new process for all of us, and I just want to know whether this is an area where we should consider adjusting the targets each year. It seems to be so dependent upon the total number in the pool versus, I guess, the
absolute number.
Absolute number, yeah.
Right. And I think that's a fair question. That's one of the dangers of measuring growth over a percentage, right, is if the denominator changes, and we know that there's a lot of variability in terms of how many total hires we're going to have, and fluctuation from year to year dependent on a lot of factors that are somewhat outside of our control. So I think, yes, we probably should look at reporting it the same way that we do our first day new hires as the actual number, and then a % increase over that. That would be my recommendation. Also, I don't like red, so yes.
I don't like the red either. And
but especially when you've done such a great job.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, you don't like red for other reasons.
Yeah. I think what I worry about too is what does it, I mean, year over year, how are we really going to get a sense of a trend? So if, we have this shortage of subs this year, and we're moving into next year, and we start the year off with way fewer subs, then there are obviously fewer subs that are going to become teachers, it seems like to me. And so then next year, maybe that number goes way down.
I think that speaks to what Superintendent Davis was talking about earlier, right? Like the data that we're reporting here is super important because we have to try and figure out some numeric way to capture what we're trying to do, which is create a pipeline of talent, right. But it's very nuanced, right? Mm-hmm. And so even if we said, okay, the number last year was maybe 147, and then this year it was 221 people went from ESP or sub to certified. If hiring dramatically decreases next year, even if we take 221 plus 1%, we're still going to see red again. So I think that's part of a larger conversation about competing objectives and how we best quantify the work that it is we're trying to do, the spirit of the work.
How we define the measure. And I know Erica's taking notes back there, and
she's going to solve it for us.
Yeah, these are really good questions, and I know you'll all come back to us with some recommendations on those, as you did, as the staff did last year. Yeah. Good point to raise, Vice President Raymond.
Thank you.
Okay, let's get that red off the screen.
All right. That's us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks for the great work you all have done. This is really impressive, really impressive. Welcome, Irene and Megan.
Good afternoon, President Simon Holland, Superintendent Davis, Trustees. For the record, I'm Irene Payne, Chief Communications and Community Engagement Officer for the school district. I'm joined this afternoon by Megan Downs, who's our Communications Manager, and I'm going to hand over to Megan, who's going to take us through our report today.
Okay,
Great. Thank you, trustees. For the record, Megan Downs, Communications Manager. So our first metric here is 3.11. That's the employee view rate of superintendent communications, more specifically the Friday Minute, which we send out every Friday. So you'll see we've had quite a significant jump this year. Our goal was 20%, and we've raised over 10 percentage points, so 18% last year and now 28% this year. Some of the ways in which we've got there is we have more employee-focused content, sort of that news you can use. We're updating folks more on legislative impacts, attendance policies, and other wide-sweeping policies that are affecting every employee. We feature more employee spotlights, featuring more of our employees, more of our students, and also a lot of our equity work. That's been a common feature in a lot of our Friday Minute offerings. We also have more high-quality, compelling video on things such as student voice, school police, sort of runs the gamut, but that seems to be a very popular feature. People always want to check out the video. You'll note here in our graph that we featured that red line, the dotted one, is the industry average. So that's about 18%. So we are doing much better than that. We're at about 28%, so we're excited for that. Some of those challenges, though, is that often some of those high numbers can be an anomaly. We've had a lot of very newsworthy items this year, such as digital days. So that can drive interest and get a lot of people to look at the Friday Minute. Also, we do have some challenges within our IT system. Security is always being increased. We like to liken it as a bouncer at the door checking IDs more frequently. And so when that happens, it sort of slows down how quickly we get that message out there. And also our images don't immediately load. So that's a challenge for us because we want to be able to show the photos. That's always eye-catching. And then, open rates, they're contingent on a variety of things, so how busy an employee is and also employee morale. So that's one of the challenges that we deal with. Some of our strategic activities in motion, we are providing more updates on what we're doing today, those updates on the strategic plan and how we're working to meet all of those goals. And also exploring more accessibility options. Of course, we have employees that don't necessarily always have access to a computer. It's not part of their regular day. And so how can they get that message out there? So we're always looking for ways to do that. And then efforts to pull in more content. We're meeting more frequently with departments like HR, academics, just to make sure that it's as comprehensive as possible and really including all of our great highlights and our challenges and the ways that departments are working on those. So that was it for that.
Well, kudos.
Item.
That's great. Yes, Vice President Raymond?
So is the goal then every year to increase by 2 percentage points?
That is
or
what
did
we set.
Because 20%, isn't that pretty good?
Yes.
As just an average over time for any?
Yeah, so again,
rate or
industry averages for educational organizations like us are typically 16 to 18%. So yeah, ours is, that might be a hard one to hit. 30% next year, that could be a challenge.
Well, it depends on how we define the target. Maybe the target
Yes.
is 2% over the 20% that was our target this year. Yeah.
Well, good job.
But our goal is obviously to continue to grow readership and make the Friday Minute accessible to all. So we're constantly looking at content and making sure it's really relevant to our audience. So we hope to continue to grow.
And I think it's interesting to think about, too, a few factors in it, the time of year and how busy they are at different times of year, but also
absolutely.
You brought up the digital days, so and employee morale. So is reading about digital days on the Friday Minute, is that really going to make the morale better, or is it not? If they're really clicking and opening on the hot topics, is that something that is a positive thing, or is that something that's a negative thing? So.
And that is a fabulous question to ask, because we've actually discussed that ourselves. And it could be that when employee morale isn't so high, then they want to read publications because they want to hear from the superintendent, they want to hear what's happening in the school district. And possibly when morale is high, then it doesn't seem as important to folks. So we don't know the answer to that, but we have been discussing it and trying to figure out how do we find that out.
I think the content has been great, and the inclusion of employee faces.
Yes, that
people
helps.
want to see, what their department is doing, or their school, or their class. So you're doing a great job with the content.
Great, that's made a difference.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. So on to 3.1.2. This is increasing our social media engagement. You'll see a slight difference from last year. Last year it was a large number. We've gone and moved ahead to the percentage rate, and that's because of Facebook really has changed the way they measure this rate. So before we were looking at views on shares, and now it's a little bit more of a comprehensive industry standard called an engagement rate, and that measures likes, comments, and shares. So it's pretty comprehensive. We have jumped in that as well. Last year we were around 6.3 engagement rate on our main Facebook page, and now we're at 10.15. So we're seeing those gains. We think that some of the reasons for that have we've started a Spanish language group that has about 500 followers so far, and it's growing organically, word of mouth, which is really what we like to see. So that's exciting, and it's another way just to engage with our families. We're also seeing a lot of engagement in terms of naming of new schools. Of course, that's always exciting. People want to chime in and give their 2 cents, and we love to see that when it's about something fun. So, and then our countdown to graduation, that remains one of our most compelling, most fun for our team. Jeff, our videographer, is in the back, and he works on that campaign, featuring one graduate from every school every year. So that'll launch in mid-May, and we get a lot of engagement on those. So that's exciting.
So it's a heads up for our new trustees. You've got something really cool to look forward to, because you'll get an email a day with a wonderful story from one of our wonderful students. So something to look forward to.
Great.
Again,
Madam
Taylor.
Thank you, Madam President. Just a question. You know how we send out press releases when we have cool things going on or something like that? And what is the best way for us to share those on our social media pages and stuff? Like, for an example, if it's, committee signups, right? When it's like, I wanted to put it out there, but I don't want to cut and paste the email. And
Right, exactly.
what is, I know I can go to the school district Facebook page. Is there...
We can work on ways with you. Obviously, sharing from our page or even the trustees page is easiest. We'll build those social media graphics, and that's usually what catches people's eyes.
Okay.
So
that just might be the best ways for me. Sometimes I'm on my phone and I'm looking and it's like, and then I sometimes I forget to go back and find it, or so if I could share it then. But then there may not be a way to do that. I know I can go to the page.
And that is the best way, because usually when we post information on the district Facebook page, and when Samantha posts on your Facebook page, those graphics have been designed to be posted on social media, so you get less distortion if you were to lift something, say, from the website.
And Facebook has a good tool where you can save that, almost bookmark it when you have time to go back and share. I do that a lot. That helps too. So yeah, some of the challenges that we've dealt with, social media, it remains a pay-to-play platform. We don't really have a budget for this. Everything we do is pretty organic. So it's not really a space that's geared toward government entities. So this is a pretty compelling engagement rate, considering we're not playing on the same playing field, so to speak. Again, Facebook, the algorithms change frequently. They're always changing what you see in your feed, depending on what you like and what you engage with. So that can make it a challenge, because if people aren't always on our page, they don't see the content. And again, some of the issues you see with Facebook, as a national conversation regarding privacy and some of that public backlash, that's a challenge that we'll continue to deal with. Strategic activities in motion. We're really excited. We've been working with our IT team to launch an app, and that'll be for the next school year. So that is really cool because it will pull in a lot of our social media content, but we'll also have the ability there to create app-specific content so we can reach more audiences there, those that are used to dealing in apps. So that's exciting. And then we've been working with Kristen to do some sponsored posts in some of our enrollment strategies to gear towards specific families that we may be losing to charters and that type of thing. So we're working on efforts like that as well in our social media. And again, always exploring other platforms. We don't yet have an Instagram page, things like that. So what's going to be the next coolest thing? And we'll explore that always.
That's great. Great work. Great work. What will the app do? I mean, what's the...
It allows you to have quick links, so parents can go in, they can access my school
bell schedule,
bus routes. It'll take you to our social media feed, what the superintendent's school visits, and schools the first version is sort of a district-wide app, but then schools will start to have more control over what they want to show in their calendars. So that will be...
We decided to start small and make sure we know what we're doing and it works. And then once, probably within 6 to 12 months, once we've populated that, then, as Megan said, then schools will have the ability to post. So what will happen is when you go into the app, you'll get the district app, but then but then, a year in, you can actually sign up for your schools and your personal schools, your child's schools information, and we'll push information out. And one of the wonderful things as far as we're concerned is that when we have emergency information, so when we have a code red or a code yellow or a weather event or a weather delay, we can push that information out. So,
great.
Yeah, it'll be good.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Very cool. Thank you for thinking ahead on that. That's excellent.
Thank you. So moving on to 3.1.3, this is the increase in our online video views. You'll see also that this is a huge jump, and that's because if you recall back to last year, we were only measuring YouTube. And we went to the board and said, okay, well, our videos are everywhere, not just YouTube, Facebook, our website, a variety of platforms. So that is the comprehensive number of our video views.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's because of Jeff's great videography. It's completely attributable to that.
Absolutely. And
how many did the views to the allocations video get?
That's one of the highlights there. That had over 8,000 views itself. And so that was a video explaining a very complex subject. Yeah. We had not tackled that before, and we feel that it was a success. So we'll continue to work on those.
And we're finding that when we work on complex, sometimes challenging issues, then those are the videos that are most viewed and most appreciated. Another one would be the video we did. Well, we've done a number of videos with school police. And one of the videos we did with school police was explaining what to do. Well, two of them, social media, about not reposting information unless you've had it verified. So how to deal with social media, and also driving quite fast in a school zone. So those videos, because they're very informational, very factual, get a lot of viewers.
Good. Yes, Dr. Taylor.
And I'm like, sorry. Thank you, Madam President.
You're
welcome. Back. Thank you. And so those the videos, they're all amazing. Whenever I see a video that your department has done, it's fantastic. Is there a way that when those become available, we can post those? We can put them on our social media pages. We can tweet them out or something to just drive more traffic and get more exposure. I'm not sure what that would look like, but I would love to post things like that on my page and let people, hey, check out this video on school safety, or check out, you're concerned about allocations? Yeah. This will help, or something.
Right. And again, all those are shared on social, but we can work toward maybe even it's in the superintendent highlights every week, maybe offering those so that if you're reading those and, hey, what can I share this week? Providing links there or something like that. Yeah.
Share of the week.
Maybe that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what we do in the superintendent's highlights. We do, like you just said, share of the week, and then you can literally copy and paste it and onto social.
That'd be great, because for any of us that are involved in social media and post, even if it's just from time to time, something that might be or if you know you're having constituents that ask you a lot of questions about things or anything like that too.
Absolutely.
I love to get that stuff out.
Great. I'll add that to our strategic activities in motion. So, no, and again, another one of our highlights that we hadn't talked about yet was increasing use of Facebook Live. I think everybody's been involved in that in some capacity. It gains in popularity. Departments get excited about it. They're suggesting, things that we can do. So that's always fun and a quick, easy way to get information out. And they're watched. That we've got the numbers on those as well. So, and then some of the challenges, again, I had mentioned with social media, that it's that pay-to-play platform. So we do struggle in sort of competing in that way, but our numbers are still pretty significant. And then again, restrictive internet filtering at schools makes it difficult sometimes for school employees or students to see our videos. And then retention of a video and how long you're watching it is really hard to measure on social media. Is it 10 seconds? Have you watched 2 minutes? Is it just in your scroll and you didn't really see it? So that's always something we struggle with as well. And again, strategic activities in motion, we're trying to replicate more of what we've done, like with that allocations video. We're working on a series of videos on equity, and we're hoping to have those more graphic-based to sort of explain complex issues. And then again, exciting things always happening in Capitol, and that'll be featured, and those are always popular and fun. Great. Okay, moving on to 3.1.4. This is positive media coverage, and I know in years past there's been some debate over positive and what that means. We define it as objective, accurate, fair. Did we get our point across? Those are some of our measures. So we have gone up. Last year we had 90 stories. The goal this year was 93. We had 105.
Yay.
So we have been active in that arena.
What? Sorry.
And a lot of it thanks to the work of our PIO, Vicki Campbell. Some of the highlights include we've had successful coverage of key events and initiatives of the district, like our Back to School Expo, groundbreakings, our equity practices, so we'll continue to do that. We've had some successful press briefings where we invite the media in, talk to them about a difficult or more complex subject, and we get good coverage out of that. The bus driver shortage as well as our guest teacher shortage were some recent ones that we did, and they had applicants from those events. So we know that type of thing is working. And also, we're really proud of enhanced coverage in national and niche publications. We were in the American School Board Journal several times this year, Ed Week, even Runner's World, and just this last Easter weekend in the Seattle Times.
The Runner's World story was a wonderful story that Vicki discovered on a visit to a school where we had a young lady who had a disability and started to run, learned how to run, and then became successful. But it was with the help of her friends and with the help of her peers, and it was an absolutely wonderful story. And that was in a national publication, just about the wraparound services that she received to help her to fulfill her dream.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's great. Awesome.
Mm-hmm. And then, go into the challenges. This is a large district. It's always difficult to sort of overcome and reshape our reputation on a constant basis. So that will remain a challenge. There's also dwindling staff and changing structure of a lot of our media partners. Makes it more difficult when you're dealing with new reporters all the time. And they get younger. So just sort of retraining, the history of the district and the challenges that we deal with. And also social media, that always continues to be a challenge. Inaccuracies get spread very quickly, as you all are aware, so that's something we continue to deal with. Strategic activities in motion. We always work to improve our relationship with media partners. We believe that, we have that constant conversation with them about accurate information, calling out errors, and just working to get accurate information as we can. And then also, we often tell our own story. We self-publish on our social media outlets, on our website. Everybody creates their own media now, and we're part of that game, and that's a strategy that we use to get our story out there.
Great. And we'd be happy to answer any questions about any of the items we've presented.
It's great. Great work.
Thank
Great
you.
work. Very, and as you say, a very big ship to try to turn when there are negative stories. So you're doing a great job with it. Thank you. Great.
Thank you very much.
Chief of Staff Lasik and his sidekick, Ms. Fredrickson.
Yes, thank you. David Lasik, Chief of Staff for the record, and with me is Samantha Fredrickson, the board's Community Engagement Coordinator. So we will switch from district media and community engagement to board media and community engagement and measures that you all have asked us to keep track of. With that, I'll turn it over to Sam.
Great, thank you. Samantha Fredrickson for the record. So our first goal, 3.3.1, has to do with Board of Trustees attendance. So as similar to how we did this last year, we measure attendance at Board of Trustee meetings, at policy committee meetings, and at Spotlight. And this year is a little weird because we had different trustees in the fall than we do now. So I've highlighted it by district. And you'll see that we are at 95% attendance, which is higher attendance than we were last year. In April 2018, we reported we were at 92% attendance. And of course, there's more meetings, trustee meetings, policy meetings, and one more spotlight ceremony scheduled. So this number will probably increase. One of the challenges, though, that we do see similar to last year is that even this 90% goal for policy and spotlight is challenging because there are less meetings. So if you miss one, you're knocked down below 90%. So it is very difficult and hard to measure. But overall, 95%. So that's pretty good.
And just from my perspective, combining them is a good way to deal with that. You can't make 90% if you've missed one on the policy and spotlight. They're all board meetings. I mean, less so for spotlight, but for policy and board meetings, they're board meetings, and that may help to combine them. Don't know, because we all need to be here for policy and for regular meetings.
Right.
So.
Yeah. You got it. So the next goal, 3.3.3, response to constituent concerns. So this one, if we have 100% of a target rate to meet that all constituents are responded to within 48 hours, again, it's challenging. But I think you all did really good, and I have to say that I know President Simon Holland is always on this always on her email, responding when people write in. So really, the only reason I think that you didn't make the goal is because things get caught in spam. That's really the main, and we can't control that. So, but if you look at the numbers, so how we track this is we look at the email that comes into the board members at washoeschools.net address and also letters that come in. We obviously cannot track your individual email. We don't have access to your emails. So hopefully you all are responding to constituents within 48 hours, but we have no way of tracking that. So you'll see that this year we've received 219 emails or letters, and 198 of those were responded to within 48 hours. And that's even including holiday weekends. So I think that's pretty good.
And I want to thank the staff because you all are so responsive when we ask anything. The staff is really right on it, and kudos to all of you. So particularly Mr. Lasik, who is joined with me at the brain on responding to these emails. But I really appreciate it, and I know that you all are very tolerant of the fact that I respond when I get it, because I gotta, And that might be at 6 in the morning, and it might be on a weekend, and you know that you don't have to respond until it's work hours. We've had that conversation, so.
Yeah.
But you still do.
Yeah. Okay. So the next goal, 3.3.4, has to do with media tracking. And this one is a little bit different than the goal that the Communications Department reported on, because this is, we were specifically asked to track Board of Trustee media coverage, both in traditional media and social media. So how we do this is we look at our Board of Trustees, WCSD Trustees Facebook page and WCSD Trustees Twitter account. And then we also track all of the media mentions where a trustee is mentioned. I did not track election-related coverage in this, because that was something, obviously, that was coming up a lot in November, but I didn't feel that that really was a part of what this goal was about, so this is really about the school district coverage. So you'll see that we've really stayed about the same. Our Twitter average monthly engagement rate and our Facebook average engagement rate stayed very similar to last year. Twitter went down a little bit to 0.9%, and Facebook went up to 11.62%. And again, the best coverage I think that we get on social media is when we have our spotlight events and the photos that we share and some of that more positive news. Most people typically go to the WCSD, the main Facebook page, as opposed to the trustees page. We have fewer followers than the WCSD page, but you know, we try to get out there what you all are doing. And of course, again, we can't track your individual social media. I know many of you are very active and are sharing things, which is great, but that's not part of what we're tracking as for this goal. And in terms of the number of articles and broadcasts that we've seen this year so far is 46 that have where a trustee has been interviewed or mentioned.
So if we tag WCSD tweet or WCSD trustees, that doesn't get caught? I mean, that doesn't get picked up?
If we retweet it.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, because I always try to tag on Twitter.
Yes. You do. I see that.
Yes.
Yeah.
WCSD trustees, right?
Well,
yeah.
I had to tweet the overall schools one too, because more people see that.
You know what? That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just do both of them.
Yeah, I'll take that one. It's a good idea.
Yeah, that's helpful. And then when we see it, we can reshare that. And
Okay, but you're not going to see who sees mine that has your tag on it.
I will see that, yes, but I won't see the behind the scenes tracking. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So if
I can
10
only see the tracking for
Gotcha. Yeah.
Exactly.
Because that would be, because I mean, you get, Trustee Taylor gets lots of likes on her tweets, and they're yeah.
I have followers that aren't busy.
But then it's not getting counted for the trustees.
Because I tweet a lot
Right.
about
Right.
and what we're doing and whatnot.
I don't know if this is the right measure for
It may not be.
Yeah.
We may need to think through that a little bit.
We might want to think about that a bit.
I think there are probably other ways that we could measure. I mean, so with Twitter, you have to be logged in to look at the back-end data to see those numbers and what that engagement rate is.
Yeah.
So we would have to be logged into your accounts to be able to see that that data.
Figure that
so
out. Yeah.
I definitely think it's worth thinking about.
Yeah, because I know, several folks who are on the board who are doing that. They're reaching lots more people that are not showing up here, but it's a good thing for the trustees.
Right.
So. They may live in Missouri, but
never know.
Trustee Kelly.
Thank you, Madam President. I was just wondering, Sam, have you guys talked about whether we need to have a trustee Facebook page? I mean, I like the page, but I'm wondering if that page isn't getting as much traction, wouldn't it be smarter for staff to spend more time on the Washoe County School District Facebook and then just have trustees appearing in that Facebook page from time to time as opposed to having our own? Or do you like having the two because they're so different? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
That's a good question. I mean, it's kind of departmental too. I mean, the communications department manages, as you saw, most all of the other Twitter handles and Facebook pages, whereas our department manages the two specific trustee ones. So I think there are, in certain cases, different types of things that can be shared on the trustee page versus on the main page. But, I mean, it brings up a good point that may be worth talking about.
Just something to think about. I mean, my feelings wouldn't be hurt if that page, if the trustee page went away, and then you were able to spend more time on the school district one, building it up more and more, and then if you were to post trustee-related stuff on that page, we might get a lot more traction than if it was on our page. So just something to talk about.
That's a good thing to think about. And, those of us that are opposed to Facebook, I'm not going to put anything on a Facebook page for the trustees. So, we're not going to all have the, the opportunity to be putting it out there to help you, to broaden it. So that's a good idea, Scott.
Whatever works, we can talk about it when we have a work
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, so 3.3.5 has to do with attendance at government and community meetings. And this is another one that I think may be worth rethinking, kind of how we measure and how we track what specifically we're tracking. So how we've tracked this is we look at the number of events that you all are invited to that we know about. So it's the events that we include in the weekly email, as well as the events that you're organizing with us. So the talk with trustees, the budget forums. And we look at the number of events then that you've attended from that larger number of invitations, and that's how we get the percentage. So the percentage looks low, but if you look at this year compared to last year, the numbers are really high. I mean, you all have been to 67 events, which is a lot, I think.
Yeah.
And when you look at the number of people that you've reached, I mean, throughout the talk with trustees, that was about 100 people, and this was actually not including the most recent talk with trustee at Sepulveda, because this slide was done before that event, which had, I think, about 30 people, 30 people.
Good.
And then the community budget forums, of course, last year reached a ton of people, almost 400 people. So, again, I think this is a success, even though it's a yellow slide. I think that you all have been really excellent about being out in the community, and we've had a lot of really good district organized events. So, I would still give you kudos, even though it looks yellow.
Well, thanks for keeping track of it.
Yeah.
And thanks for the weekly updates, telling us what's coming and who's going to what. That has really been helpful, because we can see, okay, I can't get to this one, but Ellen's going to be there. Or, no, I think that's been great.
Yeah, especially right now, this time of year. There's
Yeah.
a lot happening.
Dr. Taylor?
No kidding. Thank you. I would just say maybe this is something we should look at as well, because of some of the challenges that Sam's talking about in terms of keeping track, because there are some good positive things that happen, but it doesn't show. And I certainly wouldn't want that to reflect Pearlie, because she's doing a great job. And, we're getting out there. We do want to keep track somehow, but maybe this is something to discuss and see if this is the best way to measure it as well.
And what does the percentage reflect?
So it's the percentage of the events attended out of the full number invited to.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So that's 75 events between what you've been invited to via the email and we've organized.
Okay.
And then 67 out of 75 is pretty good.
Okay.
That's very few events that we haven't
aren't
had a trustee
represented.
at.
That's great. Okay.
Except the number is much higher than last year, so the percentage looks
Right, because if you look at last year, I mean, it's only 41 events, so we're already ahead of the schedule.
Vice President Ryman.
I don't know if this would apply, and I'm not saying it in any way to disparage past trustees, but I just wonder too, with the split year, if you're a trustee who knows that, you're not running for re-election and you are winding down in November, December time, there might be fewer events that were attended in those years where it splits. I don't know. I'm not sure. And I know how hard all of the trustees work all the time to go to all the events.
Yeah.
So but that's just something I wondered about too.
Yeah, that's a valid point.
Okay. All right.
That's all we
We'll
have.
move on. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much for the great support.
Yeah, of
it's
course.
just amazing how well you guys support us, and we really appreciate it. And I know that goes for the whole team.
Thanks for your comments, David.
His insightful comments. That's right. Okay, school safety. Who's up? Assistant Chief. Under Chief. Are the Under Chief like the Under Sheriff?
Deputy Chief.
I know. Sorry.
President Holland, Superintendent Davis, members of the board, Ray Price, Deputy Chief of School Police. I'm speaking on 5.2.3 Emergency Operations Plan. As you can see, we have remained in compliance with the state requirements for our Emergency Operations Plan. And as the highlights state, we've conducted staff trainings in conjunction with the School Safety Advocacy Council, the group that came in and audited our schools, and we've worked with them for over the last 3 years. And in the strategic activities in motion, the comprehensive plan review will take place this year, and that's outlined in NRS, who does that and how it's done. And then we continue to monitor national trends to evaluate the best practices, to evaluate what we have in place to see if it matches if we have any holes in our system.
And the handout you all had the other night at the community forum was awesome. New emergency management brochure, excellent. So thank you for that. I think that's a great resource for the parents and for the staff. It certainly was helpful to me, so I really appreciated it.
Perfect.
Yeah. Mr. Kelly.
Thank you. I was just curious about the new schools. Like, does the NRS say that you have to have an emergency operations plan before that new school starts day one, or does the school have a few weeks or months to kind of get a feel for things before that plan gets created? Like, what does the NRS say about our new schools?
I'm probably speaking out of turn, but I'm almost positive that it has to be in place before it opens so that we have a plan in place. But I can find that answer out for you 100%.
Okay. Well, and we know that this is a huge focus of attention, making sure that our staff members and our kids and our families know what they can expect from us and how we can help them respond to things. So you guys do a great job. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam President?
Yes. Trustee
I wanted
Minetto.
to say thank you. Having been in several code reds and code yellows, it seems like every step was just exactly what it should be. So I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you. It's a lot of hard work and just working together as a team. Yeah.
Great. Okay.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. Okay, Soup.
Thanks, JJ. Are you almost ready? JJ is going to put up a graphic, and so I was probably thinking about the big picture and the scope of the work we do over time. And when you look at this graphic from 2009 to where we are today, we talk about every child by name and face to graduation. We all know that road starts pre-K kindergarten and to get them there. So when we talk about looking at the kids who graduated in 2018, and you think about what work were we doing 4 or 5 years ago to get them to that spot, and I think the system is better at making sure we're doing everything we can do to get kids to the finish line, because we used to talk about what are we going to do with the 40% who's not graduating. Now we're talking about, okay, there's this last 15%, and what are those specialized needs that those students need? And so we've shifted from what I believe to be a reactive system to a proactive system about addressing the needs of the schools. And we talked earlier about counselors looking at kids. Back at house at the district, we have tracking meetings once a month, and we look at kids and we talk about like what kind of supports. And what's so great about it is there's so many notes about how many times somebody's knocked on the door, went there, and how do we go back and support the school for that student. So while I think that the schools own it, we also own it at the district office because we are serious about that piece. When we come back to you, we're going to talk about some innovative things we're doing with heat mapping and attendance and chronic absenteeism. And those are the things that we are looking at as we look at when we hit this peak of 84 and we inched up 84.5. We know we're at this peak. And then what do we need to do to get to the finish line of capturing the last set of kids? And I think we'll be pleasantly surprised to see what progress we've made. But then also when we talk about portrait of a graduate, like what does that look like as we look at what do we want our kindergartners to have, what skill set as we work with the community, and we'll come back and tie all that together. And I just want to thank the staff because we've done a lot of work to come out with these presentations. And I really tried to hold back and not comment because I was like, notes, because I can't say anything to the end. And I got to follow the rules if I tell everybody else to follow the rules, Neil. So So I think the staff painted a really good picture of the work, and so it'll be important for us to come back as we've had conversations to do a deeper dive in what happens, because sometimes people don't see that work as we present out data points to you, how we arrive at that and what things are happening for our students.
Can I just ask, can you make that graph bigger? Because I can't read it. If there's a way to, there we go. Oh, thank you. Okay.
As we talk about our investment in our students, what we know is when we saw an investment in our math curriculum, we saw an increase of achievement. We're starting to see those benefits as we invest in our reading adoption. We got a little work to do with the State Department to move that. But, you know, science is going to be an area of concern for us because we need to have more updated materials for our teachers to use. And we talk about that tier 1 exposure to grade level material. No matter who you are, you will take a grade level test. So while we have to do remediation, we also have to make sure we expose students to what they will see. And so a lot of practice and professional development for our teachers around what does that look like as they differentiate for their students. I think when we see exit rates for sixth grade and catch-up growth, we know that we have some areas in elementary school, but we also know that as we continue to do the work, our students catch up faster and in areas sometimes outpace. I put notes about the Friday Minute. I think the Friday Minute has been super intentional this year around putting employees that are not just teachers, but support staff, because we took what we heard from the employees and embedded that. What you'll see in the Friday Minute is a report on the strategic plan, too. So we make assumptions that employees are watching the board meetings. When we go out, people always tell us, well, we don't do that. So we're going to put updates of this particular presentation inside of the Friday Minute so that they know what the board and the superintendent's vision is and the goals. Then we will also do that at LTL on Friday so that our principals and our buildings know what that piece is. So as we talk about ensuring how do we get our information out and using different avenues so our 8,000 employees know about the work that we're doing. I'm going to comment a little bit about our partnership with higher ed because we talk about remediation rates once a month, and I think Debbie left. Well, everybody left, but we it must be game 7, Neil. But we have a partnership with higher ed, the presidents, and we talk about like what are the things that they see that are missing and how do we address instruction in our schools based on the need and what they see. So every month we meet and our academic managers and their core people get together and we hash out some plans and partnerships to continue that work so that there's less remediation as they continue on to higher ed. Let me see, my notes are all over the page, approach to the project. And then I think one of the things that we don't do a good job of talking about, most systems have a system where if kids are not where they should be, they tend to exit them out of the system, right? So that their numbers don't hurt. We're a system that we don't exit kids out. Like we find every way. So when you do a deeper dive into the numbers, I don't think the numbers tell the whole story. There are systems in this state where they exit kids out so that they don't impact their graduation rates. And we don't do that. Like we believe in a 5th-year senior. Like if whatever it takes to get you to the finish line, because we know what the power of the diploma means for our students as they exit us. So if it takes an extra 6 months for you to get the diploma, we are knocking on doors because we know that affords our students a different experience than a student who does not get a diploma. So I have to continue to commend the staff on that work because it's tough work. Some challenges as I look at some of our initiatives, I'm like, credit attainment. We talk about student choice and student voice, and we know that our students make some different choices. There are some students that are credit deficient, but we also have a plethora of students that have to take an AP class in band, so they forego a class that they normally would take and take it later. And so where it looks like there are kids who are not hitting the mark, when you go to their graduation rate, right, they finish on time and with honors. So we need to think about that because then we're going to be limiting kids to say, you will take this class so we can hit this metrics. But we need to look at more of who is not on track versus if that kid is taking an AP class and they have to go skiing. So we make all these adjustments based on students' needs. So we have to consider that to some degree. And we talked about the difference between a student who is off track versus a student who is on track, but making a different decision to get all their classes in. And if you work in high school and talk to the high school principals, and we've noticed, like, they want to do band, they want to do this, but it doesn't fit, so we got to wait. And so we have to consider some of those metrics.
And that's a whole child issue that we've
Right.
talked about.
Yeah, which we worked on. We also are looking at and providing resources as we come back, and we've been on our morning tours and providing information. And while we talk to the staff about non-resource driven things, staff is talking to us about resource-driven things too, and how that impacts them and trying to do more with less. So we need to look at where we're making our investment, which is tough for all of us based on budget cuts and where the money is, and how that impacts our staff. I know we talked a little bit earlier about competing measures. I still have concerns about the HR measure because I don't want to be in the business of directing folks to how to hire for their buildings. They need to hire good people and be cognizant of what that looks like. We have to make sure we create at the district level a diversified pool of a variety of people so that they see a variety of people. But as we talk to HR, and I'm going to ask a lot of questions, how are we pulling that data? Because while we're increasing diversity, there's a fine line between, as a building principal, who I want you to hire versus who you hire for what you need to be successful with your students. Overall, I think there's great work being done in the district. I think this process have proven to be more beneficial than any process we've had in the past. And it does not put the board members with those big binders and artifacts that come to you much later. As we talk about student achievement, I think this gives us that continuous improvement process to report out as we talked about. So a big thank you to Erica for working with the team and how we do this process consistently across time. And to be honest, not just for me, for any superintendent who sits in this seat, this process seems to be more effective and efficient about globally what's happened across the district on the operations side and the academic side. So kudos to the team too. So we continue to do the work as we will report out. We are not done with this school year. We know that we have kids testing. We had some alarms being pulled during testing. But some interesting things, but students are working hard. Our teachers are working hard. And so we will continue to do the work and report out on some of those outcomes and work as a team to look at what are the initiatives and what are we truly trying to measure to get to our end road of a portrait of a graduate.
Excellent. Well, and I want to say as well that this feels so much more productive than how we've had information in the past, because we are able to get some mid-year information. We can have the dialogue. We know what your challenges are, or at least we're getting a glimpse of the challenges, and we also can be mindful of what can we all as a team, board and staff together, do to raise the bar for our kids. And I personally want to make sure that this isn't experienced as a hammer. This is development. This is all of us continuously improving the outcomes for our kids. This isn't it's not a witch hunt on anybody. It's not meant to be, cracking the whip. This is how can we support the best outcomes we can provide for our children. And I'm really, really impressed and really grateful for all of the work that it takes, not only to report this, but to produce the results. I mean, that's the hard part, and especially given the resource limits that we have. So I'm really, really appreciative of all the work that's gone into this by everybody at every level. So it's really helping me as a board member. Thank you. Anybody else have comments? What's our process for, we talked about several metrics that might need a little bit of further development, and I think that's healthy. We've had some great dialogue about maybe we're not measuring the right thing here, so I'm not sure what our process is for that to occur.
So thank you, David Lasik, Chief of Staff, for the record, and Erica and I work on that hand in hand. And so we've been taking notes throughout this and speaking on which metrics we need to bring back. So at our May 31st meeting,
Okay.
We'll be bringing back the discussion and action on the items that you have asked to be changed, and then proposals from us about what the metrics should be or should look like
Okay.
In the future.
Okay, and that's the tricky part, because it's, we don't want to change the metric in the middle of the year.
Right.
But it's.
Right, so
yeah.
it's twofold, right? So it's to address things that may or may not work, but also to set targets for the
Future.
next future
Mhm.
school year.
That's great. Okay, we'll look forward to that.
And
Yes,
I-
Dr. Taylor?
Thank you, Madam President. I think what it would also do is shine some light on, like this one of the HR initiatives. I don't remember exactly which one, that they had really done a really good job, but it didn't reflect that way because we're probably aren't quite measuring it right. I want to still make sure that I don't know how they still get credit and benefit for that, because that's good hard work. And it's really doing some positive things. And so I don't know how we find a way to say, how do we mitigate that for that team that's working hard, or the communications team, some of those areas that, but we're measuring it differently. But I don't know how we do that for them. But if there's a way to, because make sure we can fix it, but how do we do something positive for them in terms of that for this year?
Well, I mean, that's true for us too. Our own measures were maybe not as perfect
Right.
as we,
Right.
would like. So that's
Same.
Go ahead, Erica.
And that's also why, trustees, that we have that narrative piece on the highlights and challenges and what's coming up. So, the color behind the number. I also think, as Trustee Holland said, President Holland said, is we should evolve the metrics if they're not helping us manage or
Absolutely.
telling the story that is reflective of the work, quite frankly. And it is a healthy thing to do. So quite right, the metrics will stay in place for this school year, but we'll evolve them for the next school year as well as set the target. So May 31st will be our fun time to do that. But just to reinforce, that's why we have the narrative. Yeah.
And to make sure that we tie the metrics to the right outcomes, because we know that we all have a tendency to drive towards the measure that we're given. And if it's the wrong measure, we might be driving to the wrong outcome. So, it's a very thoughtful process. But I'm so appreciative that staff has dived in and is paying attention to all of that. So, very grateful. Okay, anything else on that one? All right. Well, thank you. We will consider that presented and discussed. Okay. And we're on to board reports. Does anybody want to make some board reports? I know. Yes, go ahead.
I cut you off. Go ahead, Madam.
No, go ahead.
I'm sorry. The only, thank you, Madam President. Just Teacher Appreciation Week. We know it's upcoming May 6th through the 10th. I want to make sure everybody has that on their calendars, and I believe we've all signed up to deliver donuts.
Yes, we have.
On that week, we've actually worked it out. So the teachers are getting a giveaway every day, in addition to discounts and so on. That Megan's staff is working on the flyer that will go out that will show what all the discounts are and so on. Jump in if I get off base, Davis, because he's been in all the meetings as well. So Monday they'll have donuts. Tuesday they'll have something from Kimmy Candy. They're making 5,600 of them, so it's all the educators in the district, and nutrition services will be they're nice enough to deliver those for us. I believe Wednesday is ice cream day. Thursday is Burger King day. Oh yeah, and Shop Till You Drop, definitely. We have great, it isn't a raffle as much, but we wanted to do some things to kind of drive people to Shop Till You Drop. So there's some classroom pizza parties that are being given away, and then for teachers, and then there are 9 personal catering parties from Costa Vida. And they can use those at home over the summer or whatever. That's not for your class. That's for those teachers that go to Shop Till You Drop, because we just really want to drive that, because Kendall and her team are doing such a great job there. And then Friday, we're not delivering. Domino's is delivering pizza to every school.
Amazing.
And we need to work out something for Incline. For Incline and Gerlach. Okay, good. We don't want to leave them out. We want to, and Natchez. We want to work out something for them. But we got, thanks to we have great sponsors, Grand Canyon, WGU, Domino's gave us a great discount, and they're delivering. Like, you're welcome. So we aren't driving all around the district.
Well, and speaking of you're welcome, we owe a huge debt of gratitude to you, Trustee Taylor, and to the staff who have done so much work on this, and just really appreciate all of the effort. And I know some of you have been able to link up with some donations, but you've really done heavy lifting, you and the staff, so thank you for that.
They've been great. The only thing we're just waiting, the Eldorados is deciding how they want to do something. That we all know how good they are. Last year there was a little miscommunication on they give away a free buffet. But last year, we all know how good that is at the Eldo, right? Last year there was a little mix up, and so it cost them $67,000. There's a little mix-up last year, so we're straightening that out. Whoa! Yeah, because there was no method for like one time only, and people didn't lose their coupons. So people are going 2 and 3 days in a row. Oh, I was here last night because someone from staff, I won't mention their name, went down to kind of check it out. Got in line, just talking to people, and the particular educator said, "Oh, this is great! I was here last night, and this is wonderful." In line to go. Yeah, so we have to. Yikes. Yeah, I know they wanted to be involved, but not to the tune of $67,000 is what Cindy told me. So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, and then people here, and Andrew's doing what he can to get Wolfpack involved, and we have the certificate. Just any work we do, and then for everybody just delivering. We just want to love on our teachers, our educators, because non-pizza, we have enough pizza and Kimmy Candy and ice cream and all that for everyone who works in the school buildings, Neil. Yeah. Yes, in the school buildings, Neil.
Well, very much appreciated. Thank you for that, and we are all in. Thank you very much for that. You bet.
We're going to do some Facebook Lives.
We are.
I think I'm going to be gone, but I think you're going to hold it down.
I am.
Madam President.
At the warehouse.
And we'll do that to get, just to, because it's a board thing. Yes.
Good.
Yes, I did it. Oh, you were doing saying something about a teacher that's impacted you. I actually shot mine today.
Oh, good.
Oh,
good. Excellent.
Yep. And then one more thing, I got the permission from our president, because we do have 5,600 bags. Kimmy Candy, they have that rock chocolate, and they're going to put them in little bags, and they made up little things that say "Educators Rock." But we need people to put them on the bags.
Sticker on the bag. And that would be us.
And that would be us. Andrew, what?
He just signed up 4,000.
Oh, you got 4,000 of them, Andrew? So that will be us. Because we're the big push behind. Let's really do something cool for Teacher Appreciation Week a few years ago. So we'll, as soon as I get information from them as to when they'll be ready, we'll come up with a time. It might be a Saturday morning. And if we all do it, we can knock it out in a couple hours and get it for them. So.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you, Dr.
And thanks
Taylor.
to Airmark. Our Airmark's donating some stuff too.
Okay. Trustee Cottle.
Yeah, thank you. So I've been out and about, met with staff at Bennett Elementary, Spanish Springs Elementary, Shaw Middle, and Palmer Elementary. Stopped in my first PTO meetings. Those are pretty cool at Shaw Middle and Taylor Elementary. North Valley's High School Junior ROTC was awesome. Did a school visit Spanish Springs. Myself and Trustee Minetto had a talk with your trustee, which was awesome. We had like 20, 30 people there. It started a little bit angry, but we ended on a good note. David was there. And the last thing, if anyone's interested, I can send this coupon to you. Tonight at BJ's between 5 and 10 p.m. over on Sparks Boulevard, if you scan this coupon, 20% of your order will be donated to Shaw Middle School.
Oh, great.
And so, nice fundraiser for them. So I'm going to go out there and do that. So that's all I've got.
Good. Okay. Anybody else want to share? Trustee Minetto.
I have been visiting quite a few schools in Sparks. It seems like a whole bunch in one day, and I don't remember where I've been. But I really like it. I get to see some kids. You almost at every school, I see kids I've taught, and then I see teachers I taught with, and so I'm still hearing. It's good to know and hear from all that.
It is,
and I'm enjoying it a lot.
That's great. Scott.
I don't really remember what I've done. You know,
The baby.
yeah, the baby's been, he's unfortunately, well, the only sad thing about it having a new baby is he does tend to prevent you from doing all the things that you'd want to do. So yeah, so I'll pass, but.
Okay. Dr. Taylor, do you want to add anything else?
No, I've taken up enough time.
Oh, that's all right.
Regular stuff, students and stuff, getting them in. So
Yeah, okay.
That's part of the job.
Trustee Calvert, anything you want to share? Okay. Vice President Raymond.
I'll touch on a few. I went to the Nevada Department of Education's, I sit on the Council on Family Engagement as a representative from Washoe, and went to that meeting, got updates from Clark County and some of the work that they're doing, and just a bigger kind of update and preview of the National Family and Community Engagement Conference that will be taking place here in Reno in July 10th through 12th at the Pepper Mill. I know a few of us are going to be there. So I think that's going to be an amazing conference. That we heard a little bit about some of the sessions there already being kind of in the works, but then also some of the site visits, which are going to be really great. Had the opportunity, or was invited to be a guest judge for KMPB for the Writers Contest, which is for kindergartners through third graders. And so there's a first, second, and third place winner in each grade. And then, so we got to read, I think there were 6 submissions for each grade. So we got to read through all the stories. They were incredible, and just a great representative of our district. So that was fun.
And they actually make a book for the winners.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool.
Each of the winners,
Yeah,
my daughter won when she was in first grade. So we got to be part of it through that. But each winner gets, each first, second, and third place winner gets a published book, and they have a great ceremony where they present the winners, and they walk the red carpet, and the featured winners' stories are up in the airport all summer long. So if you're flying in and out of Reno, they're in the baggage claim area. You can see them on the one of their walls there. So it's a really great recognition. And this year they added a few components, which I think were really great. They awarded a whole classroom for each grade level that really just shined with their submissions. So each grade level there was a class selected, and then I believe they picked a school that really stood out for the work that they did in their submission. So that was a nice addition. And then I'll end on this one so I don't take up too much more time, but wanted to let everyone know that the executive committee and the board of the Nevada Association of School Boards officially hired a new executive director, and her name is Deb Oliver. She's from the Dayton area, relatively new to Nevada, but we just all were very impressed with her experience. She has been a nonprofit executive director. She has a pretty lengthy background in education, and a really strong background in event planning. She kind of just had everything in one package, and so I think we got really lucky to be able to find someone. She's been a contract employee before too, which was with the previous, there was Dottie, and then there was somebody else for a little while, and that individual, the adjustment into being a contract employee was a challenge, and so for Deb that was something that was important, that she was comfortable with. So I think it'll be great to kind of get everyone acquainted with Deb, and so I look forward to being able to, if possible, introduce everybody at our next big conference or training. So.
And thank you for serving on that board. I know that's been taking a lot of time, so
it was
appreciate
good experience. It was a lot of time, but it was we had a great pool to begin with, which I know they didn't have the previous time. Those that were able to serve on both interview panels talked about it, and it was a very hard decision to make in the end, which was a really good thing, that we had so many great candidates that we wished we could have given everybody the job, but it was a real great opportunity for the state to have a pool like that. So
that's great. That's great. Well, yeah, and thank you for serving. Just quickly, I represented the district at the Regional Planning Governing Board meeting. It didn't go quite as well as we had hoped, and so it got punted to a future time to evaluate how new schools will be treated, whether they will be projects of regional significance, which significantly complicates our development of new schools. But we're still working on that and had some good ideas for how we could work that through. Went to the Student Advisory Council, which was great fun, and did some activities around how people engage with technology. That was excellent, and Robert Sidford was there with them and did some presentations on that. Went to Incline Middle School with the soup. We had a great visit there. Visited at Tolles and at Warner. And then last week was all Katie all the time on television. So we did, we did Joe Hart, and we did Face the State, and we did interviews on digital school days, and so, but that was fine. Happy to represent the district on those. And the community forum, which Vice President Raymond was there. The safety forum, Trustee Cottle was there. Was great. Really enjoyed that. Also represented the district at the EDON board meeting, and then I was with the superintendent on her visit to Inspire. So we've had some busy times, and really want to thank trustees for all the time that you invest outside of these meetings. I think I don't think any of us actually knew when we took this job how much extra time was involved. Maybe Scott, because he'd done it before, but I really want to thank all of you for the great presence that you give for the district out there. So, Superintendent, it's to you.
Okay. I'll kind of be fast. Trustee Raymond, did not somebody you know won an award also? A very beautiful student in the Washoe County School District.
Yeah.
well, actually, yes. My daughter was selected as the statewide winner of the Nevada Department of Wildlife's Free Fishing Day poster contest. So if you go to Shields or Cabela's or wherever else around town where they sell fishing stuff, you might see her little drawing, and she got a free fishing rod and reel and a little tackle bag, and they came to her school and did this great presentation. It was awesome. So I'm a very proud mother, but also proud for Washoe County School District because it's a statewide competition. And the other two winners were, the second and third place were from, I believe, Winnemucca and Elko. So it's great that we had a winner here in Washoe.
That's great.
Thank you for sharing that with us. I knew you wouldn't tell if I didn't put it out in the universe, and I think it's important because it was statewide, and it doesn't matter that she's your daughter. It was really an awesome picture, and she has a craft. She loves to draw, and she's really good at it. Trustee, you also mentioned July 10th through the 12th, our National Family Engagement. The Seattle Times wrote an article. I think we'll put that in our highlights at the end of the week, but it's a great article around nationally what's happening with family engagement, and they highlighted Washoe County School District and the work that we've done. And then I did another interview today around family engagement, but I think it's nice that they highlight the Lisa Crane's department, parents, families. So it's a really good article that ties into what's going to happen here for our national convention. And I think it speaks mounds about the work we do here. So in October, we're actually hosting the National SEL Conference for There'll be 60 districts from across the country as we do this work with Castle. Today I talked to Tim Shriver, and he's going to do our keynote for us for free. Right. So I think there's, yes, like last time. So I think there's some good things happening with our work. They'll be able to visit our students and look at what we're doing around SEL. We did do school visits. I'm going to publicly apologize to Trustee Caudell because our schedules got jacked up and he didn't get to do his visit with me. So we'll be better about that. And if you watch the Twitter page, we were at Piccolo, and Kristen and I were hiding Easter eggs, and they had tons of Easter eggs. But I don't know. I think your heart is a little different when you go to that type of Easter egg hunt. We both walked out, and we were just filled with amazing joy, and the kid who found the golden egg, and the experiences that those families go through. We both walked out because we both have daughters, and we were like, we forget how easy we have it because it's a gift card or something, right? or an Easter basket, and the challenges those families face every day. So it was a great opportunity to see kids collecting eggs and just being engaged, and it was just a wonderful time for us to visit. And we did not share that with you because we found out the day before, like late, and we were like scrambling to adjust schedules and hire principals, so it wasn't really a secret. And then I just want to touch on the HBCU tour. And typically we all tried to go. Last year I didn't make it, but I know Katie and several of you made it, but this year I actually made it. I'll just say that when the students got up to talk about leadership, I was proud of our Washoe County School District students, and they talked about their experiences on the tour. They had an opportunity to meet judges, legislators, talk about fraternity life, and it was really good because all the time while they talked about their experiences, they talked about what's important about leadership and having grit and resiliency as they chart the course to decide where they're going to go. Some of them did decide that they were going to stay here and go to UNR, but that's okay. But they have choices and they have that opportunity, so we're always grateful for that. And as you all know, students are testing. We're getting to this finish line. And our students from Reno left, and I was going to say that because I told them Chris Hackbush is like a massive tweeter. I don't know if you follow him, right? And so anytime you tweet out, and I actually tweeted out at the HBCU tour, and he tweeted back in 30 seconds, I spy a Reno Husky, and then he gave a shout out to his kid. I didn't allow him to give a I spy today, but he tweeted out respect, honor, and strength, RHS. And so I just love the fact that we have our principals super engaged with kids, and that's the work we do. We do academic work, but we also do the social side and address the whole child.
Mm-hmm. You bet. Okay.
Okay, Neil, I'm done.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Future agenda item requests. Anybody have future? Trustee Caudill.
I had mentioned it earlier, but I think it would be good for us to hear Mark Mather's Debt Management Commission presentation on May 14th that he will give on May 17th.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Any others? I'm wondering if it might be time in June or sometime to come back and report on morale and just, hear how things are going. And then, David's shaking his head, fall. One of the things that I have been asked about, and I didn't know the answer, was about teacher turnover and about teacher absenteeism. So at just some point, it's not urgent, but just wanted to understand that, and because those things are related to morale in some organizations. So those would be things for the future. Okay, any public comment? Okay, is there anyone at all who wishes to make public comment who's here and has not submitted a card? Okay, thank you. Then we will be adjourned. Our next meeting is May 14th at 5:00 p.m. You there?
But we start.
We start at 4. Our meeting is at 5, though, for the public record. But we start earlier to have the Indian education presentation. So we'll see everybody there. All right, we were adjourned.